My energy level is much better. I sleep through the night now instead of waking up a couple of times. If you're looking to make the same change, do what I did and call Awaken 180 Weight Loss. 844-346-1800. That's 844-346-1800 or online at awaken180weightloss.com.
With your top stories, struggling to get above freezing this morning. Tell you about the full forecast and traffic in 5 minutes. Nervous investors today. The Dow tanked more than 500 points at the opening bell on Wall Street this morning. Two things going on. Credit Suisse lost a quarter of its value during European trading overnight. Department of Justice and the Securities and Exchange Commission conducting independent investigations into the sudden collapse of Silicon Valley Bank last week. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen testifies tomorrow before the Senate Finance Committee. Tennessee U.S. Senator Marsha Blackburn's a member and will ask whether signs of mismanagement were missed or ignored.
We're finding out that the bank was more focused on diversity, equity, inclusion, environment, social justice than they were on the solvency and the liquidity of the bank.
Meanwhile, the Biden administration is blaming Republicans for the rollback of regulatory reforms, which even some Democrats voted to do. A stupid mistake. That's what the Biden administration says happened when a Russian fighter jet brought down one of our drones over the Black Sea yesterday. U.S. military labels the actions by the Russian jets as dangerous and warns they could lead to miscalculation and unintended escalation. Right now in Middle Tennessee, News 2 says the Wilson County Director of Schools, Jeff Luttrell, asked the board to approve new equipment to save lives.
What we're dealing with in our society, in our communities, with vaping and fentanyl, we need to have Narcan in our schools.
Yeah, the board agreed, so Narcan and EpiPens will be in every Wilson County school soon. New safety ratings out on SUVs. You might be driving one.
Modern crash tests have made front seats much safer in midsize SUVs, which are popular family vehicles. But the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety says those improvements haven't reached the back seats in most models where children often ride. Of the 13 models tested, only 4 earned good ratings from the IIHS: Ford's Explorer and Mustang's Mach-E, Subaru's Ascent, and Tesla's Model Y. Most were rated poor.
As Daria Albinger reporting in the latest news. Traffic and weather next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Get 2 windows free with every 2 you buy and pay nothing for 2 years. Call 866-90-NATION or go to windownation.com.
This report is sponsored by Audible.
A brief warm-up coming our way. This is meteorologist Stefano DiPietro in the First Alert Weather Center. We'll see plenty of sunshine this afternoon and a warmer day. Temperatures back in the mid-50s for that high, dropping down to the 30s tonight. Tomorrow, a few more clouds in the afternoon, a little breezy, but an all-around warmer day once again. Mid to the upper 60s for that high. Thursday night into Friday, rain returns across the mid-state. We'll hover right around 60 on Friday. Get ready for a big weekend cool down. Good sunshine Saturday and Sunday, but temperatures in the 40s, overnight lows in the 20s.
Sunny skies in Franklin, 32 degrees, 34 in Mount Juliet, Linoleum, and 31 down in the borough. Downtown on Music Row, the statues are naked, the skies are sunny. It's 34 degrees. It feels like 34 in Nashville at WTN. Well, more bank endangerments, bad economic report on spending. You could expect the Dow and the NASDAQ and the S&P to be down, and it is. The Dow's down 490 right now. NASDAQ's down 115. The S&P's down 53. All three are in the red. The market is dramatically down, and down more than we gained yesterday, which is one of the few up days we've had in the last 3 weeks. Market is down at 906. I'm Michael DelGiorno for King Insurance and Associates. They're an independent agent, and that's a big advantage for you. That means they have multiple companies they can shop on your behalf, and we don't just say it, we do it. And in our 28 years, we've weeded out the non-competitive companies, kept great relationships with the biggest, best, and highest rated. A better pool to choose from. Bottom line is that, along with bundling, is how we get you significantly better insurance at a dramatically lower premium. What's dramatically lower? I had better coverage on my home, its contents, my automobiles. I've since added teenagers. Champion in my corner after my accident. And I saved $1,500. Now, another way of looking at it is my previous independent agent was overcharging me $1,500 for inferior coverage. That was infuriating. My listeners started saving the same or more, but here's the bottom line. Don't switch to King because I did, or my listeners. Switch because you should. As a company, a family, or an individual, you deserve the better coverage. You have everything to save and nothing to lose. Call and get a royal review today. Make the switch to King. 329-8121. Use that money to afford inflation. 329-8121, 329-8121, online at tkinginsurance.com. Is Brother Ken here?
Here, Brother Michael.
I think I have Tourette's.
Why? What?
Ever since the Gang of Three started, I can't stop going, yes, boys, yes. And so I did it about like 17 times. Yes, boys, yes.
Well, see,
And so Andrea goes, what are you doing? Like that. I think my Tourette's, after 23 years and 3 months into marriage, I'm finally wearing her down. What are you doing?
See, you got me whenever we first started here together. Well, whenever I first started with you, got me with Fatbear.
Yeah, I notice you do that even when we're not together.
All the time.
So maybe you got a little bit of the Tourette's going too.
I do. I've done it in public places.
So when I had my son, who was genetically so much like my father, and then started to do things just like my father. And so I was telling him how, the guy's got no filter. It's just like pure impulse. All that. And so my dad's eating soup at a nice restaurant in New Orleans, and the soup comes out his nose. He starts laughing. And he goes, Pam, pointing to his current wife, Pam thinks I got Tourette's. And I was like, well, I think 3 generations. Yes, since you said that all morning, I'm going, yes, boys, yes. I've done it in different tempos, different formats.
I like that one.
Yes. I just, yes, boys. And I look, Andrew's finally like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Apparently I went too far.
Yeah, I make my family mad.
Apparently it's like the hiccups, you got to boo somebody out of them.
Yeah, in the middle of the grocery store, I will go, Fatbear. And man, my wife gets mad at me.
Cracking up, aren't we? All right, so Joe Biden getting mocked. For all we know, I try not to be, typical talk radio guy. For all we know, it's a fake, and for all we know, it's real. There's any parent could get any kid to scribble a note to the president. But if you look at the piece of paper, it certainly looks like it was worked on. So a lot of people are mocking the president that he's talking about equality in wages, using a child as a prop, probably a fake letter as a prop. Meanwhile, drones are down. The other Joe Biden news is I think the presidential campaign has begun, and it appears to be between Joe Biden and Ron DeSantis. So the president is doing all kinds of, he hasn't even announced he's running yet, but all kinds of indirect attacks on DeSantis. This could suggest that they're baiting DeSantis into running. I think DeSantis is running, but I mean, they want him. I think they want Donald Trump. They think it's going to be DeSantis, could be one explanation. Whatever it is, he's not doing a lot. I haven't seen one thing directed at Donald Trump, but he's doing graphic attacks on Governor DeSantis. And I'll play you a clip on an interview. It's disgustingly out of context. But it was Ron DeSantis's response that I think is worthy of the conversation. And I know you guys are all sensitive because some of my audience really loves Donald Trump, and you really want Donald Trump to get the nomination, and you really believe he's going to win the presidency, and that's great. I loved his first 4 years policy-wise, and I would vote for him again. But I got to tell you, stop with the DeSantis can't stand up like Trump can, because he's doing it, and he's doing it very well. So President Biden makes this ridiculous attack over Florida, protecting kids from sex change procedures and operations. And he just responds with a dual video of what I'm going to play for you, which is Joe Biden talking like an idiot, and then graphic images of what they're doing to these kids' bodies. I used to love Chrissy Everett when I was a kid, and Chrissy Everett would throw her best at Martina Navratilova. I mean, just, whew. And Martina Navratilova would come back twice as fast with twice as much spin. And I was just like, way to go, Governor DeSantis. That's how you slap them silly right back. This is an interesting story that's going to get Mac's attention. I try to throw one in for Mac. So, and I think Darren Waller has been my tight end 2 of the last 3 years. So, I think he's good, or I wouldn't keep drafting him. But this is starting, and the more I read about it, the more I thought, I think this might have happened. So there's all this conversation about, Darren Waller is probably by position for the Las Vegas Raiders, best player on the team, hands down. Is there anybody at any other position?
Devontae Adams, but yeah, he's definitely up there. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, okay, yeah, you're right, Devontae Adams. I forgot he got traded there. But Darren Waller, he's if you're building something and you got Jimmy G coming, you want Darren Waller, right?
100%.
So I'm sitting here reading this story because he's married to the guard, Kelsey Plum. I think they're the Vegas Aces. I'm going by memory. So she's the point guard for the Vegas women's WNBA team. He's the tight end for the Las Vegas Raiders. All the conversations from the coaches to the general manager in the offseason, building our team, Waller's a big part of it. And then all of a sudden, Waller gets married, and he gets married to Kelsey Plum, and they don't inform or invite the coach, and now suddenly he's traded. And she's accusing them of trading him, because they didn't invite him to the wedding. And I'm thinking,
wow.
But, it was one of those things, like, remember yesterday we were making fun of that Illinois law, and of course, the more you study it, at the most, it's 6 days of paid leave without any. But this one, the more I dug, I was like, oh my God. Because at first I thought, let's laugh at the wife, right? And then the more I read it, I was like, I have no explanation other than they got rid of him because they weren't invited to the wedding.
They were.
That would be like, I don't even know what to compare that to.
Yeah, that is.
I guess that'd be like
see that.
That'd be like them trading Dan Mandis because Allison wasn't invited to the wedding.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, isn't that a funny topic, too? What if we had trades in radio?
Exactly.
Like they do in sports. Yeah, you're living in Nashville. Everything's great. And all of a sudden you come to work. I'm sorry, we traded you to Boise for a board op and a promotions guy to be named later. Actually, am I the only one that finds that exciting? Isn't it? I find that
you like Boise, Brother Michael.
Well, no, but I find it exciting that you never really know what your life is. You can make plans, but you never. I've let go of that a long time ago, trusting God, but if God wants me here, nobody's getting rid of me. If God doesn't want me here, he's not going to protect me, and somebody's going to get rid of me because I'm putting my foot in my mouth every day. After all, I got Tourette's. But wouldn't that be kind of a fun life that you just wake up one morning, you think you live in Murfreesboro, and no, you don't, Brother Ken. You just got traded to Little Rock.
No, it's 3 degrees outside. You're back in Boise.
I think it would be fun to never know. What do you do? You come home, honey. I got traded. We got to move. I mean, they can't blame you. You got traded.
Well, if it came with a 3-year, $51 million contract, you bet.
Yeah, I'm in. Well, that's
Well,
what stinks. They're going to have to do long distance. Kelsey can't move.
well,
She's
They
got to
got-
play.
they got the money.
Yeah,
Anyway.
they'll see each other every night.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. They'll be fine.
They'll just fly around. Let's meet by the Arch in St. Louis. I'll give you and then they'll stop kissing after about a year, so it won't matter. Oh, by the way, oh my goodness, you may have to hit the intro. Are you going to ask the question, what do you mean by that, Michael?
Yeah, wait. Is that what I have to look forward to?
This sounds like a Mac talk to me.
Mac talk.
This is starting to sound like a Mac talk. A curious, young, intelligent man asking an old, stubborn fool for wisdom. This is a Mac talk. Well, Mac, you probably have some delusions of grandeur about what marriage is like. After all, every time you see Hannah right now, you can't stop gazing at her. You can't stop holding her hand. You can't stop kissing her. And
This
you
is
probably
true.
think, this is what I want to do the rest of my life. And you'll think that right through the vows, right through the reception, and right through the honeymoon. But as Brother Ken will tell you, there will come a time, and this seems unimaginable to you, where you could, I don't know how to describe it other than like a perfect alignment of the stars that has to take place before even lovemaking will happen. Because, it depends on, did she shower today? Does he have irritable bowel today? Does she have to get up early? I mean, there's a whole other thing to that you don't see coming. But probably the greatest phenomenon, I think Ken would chime in, you probably won't French kiss your wife for more than a year. And then you'll wonder.
Yeah.
Hey, let me tell you something.
That's so
I
sad.
can tell you the last 3 times I French kissed my wife. And they were all before COVID. Okay, I'm just doing comedy right now, but it's not that far from the truth. I don't know. What is it, Ken, about when you get you do stop kissing? don't you?
I don't
guess
know
you
what
know
it
each
is.
other, right? You know your breath.
Yeah.
You know that, you skip brushing every now and then. Or,
I
you know all the
can't-
secrets.
I can't pinpoint the exact day or year
Mac, I wish I could see your face right now.
that everything stopped being spontaneous. But it just did.
Like, you'll even have big plans for the night. You'll talk about it like all day, really all week.
Yeah.
Oh, man, Thursday night. And then Thursday night arrives, and you're like, yeah, let's just watch a movie.
Yeah, you'll hear the pitter-patter of little feet coming down the hall.
Oh, well, that's a whole other. That's when you have kids.
Yeah.
I think that's when it starts, right? Your whole bio. Look, I'm almost priestly right now. After 16 years, of Nicholas, I'm monastic. So yeah, that's the shocking reality, Mac. You and Hannah get all your kissing
Wonderful.
in, because once you're married, it just stops, and nobody really has an explanation for it. Ken, anything you want to add to our Mac talk?
No, I think we
Nail on the head. That's wonderful.
Depress you enough? Is
Yeah, this is
climate
great.
change a false religion? I guess this would be like, we'll do this a little bit later on, but everything else in the Matrix, right? Depends on which side you're on. No, not so fast. Rasmussen did the research, and you'd be surprised. I think everybody even realizes. Now, I teach in depth all the time about you abandon God, his way, his truth, his life, where anything goes. Somebody's going to grab onto something. That's going to become their new, not acts of devotion, although it can be acts of devotion, but their heart of devotion. Therefore, it is their religion. And you're going to be shocked by the number of Americans that agree. The latest polls, this sounds like I'm being extra critical, and I don't mean to be. But Gavin Newsom early on made a play to get some name recognition, throw his name into the hat, start engaging with other Republican candidates. He's tried to make a little bit of run, enough for me to make this criticism. Gavin, it looks terrible for you. We're going to look at the new Real Clear Politics. It's early, a year and whatever it is, 7 months out. But look, everything I have said from the very beginning, if Joe Biden bows out, I'm telling you, History will repeat itself like it did in 2020, like it did in 2016. Bernie Sanders will go right to the top. And I see that in these numbers. But what I don't see in these numbers is anything about Gavin Newsom having a shot. I would make a big deal out of Yola Tango playing a Nashville show in drag to protest the Tennessee bill, but I have no idea who they are. Or the LA queer community is speaking out against the Tennessee ban, and they're basically saying, we'll perform in a dumpster if we have to. We just have to dance. That's just all the chaos of anything goes. And I think probably when we have David Zanotti, he's a little fascinated, let me just say, with Jane Fonda's inciting remarks. We'll have that. And then what Ron DeSantis said with Glenn Beck on Dr. Bricks and COVID. That is a real shocker. That and more between now and noon. No Mac. We've expired our Mac Talk. Are we allowed more than one Mac Talk a day?
That's Mac Talk.
I don't think we are.
Of course. We can do more, right?
Well, so you might get inquisitive later, but there's your Mac Talk already. The rest is between now and noon. Miss a little, you miss a lot, and I'll miss you. All right. Pain. It's awful. Back pain, neck pain, knee pain, hip pain, elbow pain. All day long, all night long. That's if it lets you sleep, and then it's waiting for you when you wake up. And what you rarely ever think about is all the things you used to do that you loved doing that you can't do anymore. At the Dr. Gill Center in Franklin, we get all that. And we treat all that with no needles and no downtime. And I know you think of us as a chiropractic center, and we are, and we're proud of that. Chiropractic care really works, but we have state-of-the-art industry equipment. Our Class 5 lasers, our red light therapy, spinal decompression therapy. Dr. Gill was the pioneer in our state, a game changer. Separation without a scalpel. These are all designed to pinpoint inflammation in the body, reduce the pain, the swelling, accelerate the healing through treatment, pain-free living, back to doing the things you love. And it all begins with an accurate, affordable diagnosis. $23 covers everything in your new patient appointment. Your extensive exam, any and all x-rays, imaging, and your accurate diagnosis. So don't do nothing. Never settle for just a bill. Call the Dr. Gill Center. $23 covers everything. New phone number, 882-4838, 882-4838, online at callmepainfree.com.
Stuff's getting in the way out there. They're still trying to fix that broken water main, so North 1st Street between Spring and Dickerson Pike still closed, and you can't get there from 24 eastbound. Then in the Gulch, got a crash blocking the shoulder, the right shoulder that is, 40 westbound right there at Broadway. And 3 things weighing on stocks this morning. I'll tell you coming up at 9:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
I don't know where that came from. I almost hesitated even doing the Mac Talk, Ken, because I knew we'd get attacked on the Super Text hotline.
Uh-oh.
You people are funny. My wife and I are 62 and 60. I didn't say I wasn't all over her. I just said we don't just sit around and French kiss anymore. But, just for the record, I've been married 38 years and French kissed my wife last night.
Woo!
You poor guys. My wife and I French kiss almost daily after 40 years of marriage. Remember when we were young and lip gloss and you tied the knot with the cherry?
Yeah.
You know, after 50 years of marriage, you swap dentures. I don't know why. I don't think, look, Andrew and I are very attracted to each other. We have a very healthy physical life. Not that that's anybody's business or want to hear about it. But there is something about just sitting around and kissing anymore, which, you know, when you think about it, that was the best part of childhood, wasn't it? That Little League Baseball?
Absolutely.
But it does kind of, you know, you do other things, but life is about more than that. I mean, you're right. The pitter-patter little feet is what
that
makes you rush more than anything. You can't. It's not a big, you know, opening act. We get right to the main performer is on the stage, ladies and gentlemen.
That's when you say, "Get away from me, boy! You bother me."
Ah, yes, there you go again. Now I'm going to be doing that in Tourette syndrome. Well, I was going to bash Gavin Newsom instead of myself. I'll get to that in just a little bit. You know, there's a lot of lessons on the banking, not the least of which is, and you're going to hear a lot. This is almost, it's so true, and it shouldn't be lost, but it's starting to feel like a narrative almost. But this is the problem with political correctness and wokeness and the multiculturalism and all these standards that we make the priority diversity, not excellence. It's just that simple, gang. I mean, at the end of the day, if somebody is the best person for that job and just so happens to be gay, so be it. I got news for you. None of us would allow anybody on our team to bully that person or treat them wrong. And we don't need any more training to do that. That's just godly decency. We know how to treat other people. But that's not where the corporate world is going. That's certainly not where the banking world was going. I mean, they had a who's who. It was like a Noah's Ark of diversity. But nobody that knew anything about banking. I think that's relevant to the conversation. But there are other more pressing stories. Ultimately, how did this happen? How did it happen again? And in all these bailouts, who's really paying for it? Is it member FDIC or member you? You're paying for it. You'll pay for the next one and the next one and the next one. We're going to break it all down in depth. I mean, we're going to peel the onion far more than narratives and far more than radio and television segments with Peter St Onge between 10:05 and 10:30. He's a senior economic fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Also, David Zanotti will join us just after 10:30 as well. 9:30, what the polls say about Gavin Newsom. Not a lot is the answer, but it's next on WTN.
.30 on the dot. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Temperatures starting to rise, and it looks like we're not going to be back below the freezing mark for a couple of more days at least, and only then it'll be at night. Might be mixed with some rain during the days, though. Full forecast coming up in 2 minutes. 3 things weighing down on stocks this morning. The Dow sinking more than 500 points at the opening bell and has not recovered. Overnight, global investment bank Credit Suisse lost a quarter of its wealth. Investigations launched yesterday into Silicon Valley's bank collapse, or rather the Silicon Valley bank collapse. And Americans stopped spending as much money in February. Retail sales dropped 0.4% in February after a 3.2% surge in January. And Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin at a virtual meeting with NATO allies responding to Russian fighter jets downing an unarmed U.S. surveillance drone over the Black Sea.
I know that everyone here has heard that Russian aircraft again engaged in dangerous, reckless, and unprofessional practices on Tuesday in international airspace over the Black Sea.
Russia says we're lying. And that's the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. Have you ever thought about why we invest in the stock market? Well, you often hear because we want to protect ourselves from inflation. Well, what is inflation? It's prices going up. Who's raising prices? Companies. What do you own when you own stocks? You own the companies raising prices, so it helps protect us from that. The other thing is this. Think about the most successful people you know. They're typically business owners. And you get to be a business owner when you invest in the stock market. Now, if we think about the stock market, a lot of people worry about, well, what if the stock market drops and it never comes back? Well, this is another thing that I like to explain to people. If the stock market goes down and it never comes back, what does that mean? That means that earnings went down and they never came back up again. So earnings went down. If earnings go down, what else goes down? Taxes go down. If taxes go away, what else goes away? The government goes away. If the government goes away, the FDIC goes away. So think about it. Everything is built on the stock market. That's why I don't ever worry about the stock market going down. Everybody has the same goal in mind when stocks go down. Get it to come back up because we got to get earnings to come back up. Now, you have two things at your control to get earnings to come back up. One is sales. We can change what we're selling or sell more of whatever we have if we can. And if we can't do that, we can reduce our expenses. And that's exactly what companies do. You'll notice that they lay off people when things get bad, and hence that is why the stock market has recovered from every downturn throughout all of history. Now, if you want to learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call or call 615-851-1950.
love that organization. 9:38, 22 minutes before 10 o'clock. Information-fueled, opinion-driven. That's Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I'm Michael DelGiorno. Very grateful you found time for us today. We're going to make the most of it. Next half hour is Must-Hear Radio. Our senior fellow economist from the Heritage Foundation weekly visit with Peter St Onge on the bank crisis, Silicon Valley Bank in general. How much of this was scandalous ties? How much of this was diversity over expertise? Who's really paying for this? We've got a full banking segment coming up for the full half hour. Then David Zanotti will join us at 10:35. Somebody on the super text line said, "Did you ever make your point about DeSantis?" That's why I don't like to do that anymore. In the opening monologue, I want to give you a feel of everything we're going to cover today. And I probably should have just jumped into the first one. I didn't mean to frustrate you, but here's the deal. Two really good moments for Ron DeSantis. One, and he's a friend of mine. I realize he's on a competing station, but that doesn't matter. The truth is more important than where the truth was revealed. So Glenn Beck sits down with Governor Ron DeSantis, who's out with a book. Isn't that always your first clue someone's running for president? That's how we launch presidencies. We start with a book. But so he's out with a book. He's been to New Hampshire. He's been to Iowa. He's running. All the indications from the polling is you're going to have a showdown, Donald Trump versus Ron DeSantis. And I really think, and people get mad at me for saying this, if Donald Trump can show he's a Donald Trump 2.0, because nobody's got more credibility than Donald Trump. He was elected. He did what he said he would do, and he made America economically and foreign policy secure and great again. Now, he did a lot of other things with his mouth and his tweets that were very divisive. So if Ron DeSantis can show I'm just as tough and I can do everything Donald Trump did and without all of the other divisive stuff, there's an advantage for him. Because there are a good deal of Republicans who think, I want Trump's policies. I don't want the Trump circus. I know you hate hearing that, but that's a real, I know we're an eternity out, a year and 9 months, whatever it is, but I can taste that. That's real. And if Donald Trump can show a Donald Trump 2.0, I'm going to give you all the things that made me great and everything that made America great, but I'm not going to do all the things that I did and acknowledge some of the things that he did that he won't do this time. Then I think he might have an advantage. But right now, early on, here's a couple of really good moments for Ron DeSantis. First of all, he drops a bombshell with Glenn Beck. Now, if you went back and listened 3 years ago in real time, things that David and Zanotti and I were saying, not the least of which was, since when do you shelter? Since when do you isolate the healthy and not the sick? It didn't make sense to us any more than when we got to how you had to wear your mask in the lobby, how you had to wear your mask walking to your table, but once you were at your table, you could take your mask off. That didn't make any sense. That a COVID-19 virus would know it can't sit at the table. If the hostess doesn't seat it, it won't sit at the table. Just nonsense, right? But nothing more than, and we went back to some of the greatest pandemics in the history of mankind. Never have we isolated the healthy. Always the sick, but never the healthy. And so Glenn Beck asked him to talk about how Dr. Bricks was on Florida and harassing him and what her response was.
So the White House task force was hammering me for like the first really 3 months because they wanted me to be clamping down harder. And she, so I called. I was like, Deborah, just tell me, when in American history modern has this been done and what were the results? Because I kind of feel like, we're flying blind here and we may be doing things that could be damaging. And as she said, she's like, it's kind of our own science experiment that we're doing in real time. And that didn't sit well with me. No. I mean, you're a citizen of a republic. You're not a guinea pig.
I mean, I love the common sense. This goes back to the very beginning of COVID. And I'm hearing about all these models. Now, I have enough common sense. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a virologist. I don't have any expertise in this area. But if you're going to bring up models, I have enough common sense to know this is happening in real time and we don't have data yet. So if you don't have data, you're putting assumptions into these models. And so my natural curiosity, I didn't know anything about COVID. I'm not a scientist. I'm just curious. All right, so I went to the University of Washington to look at the models. And I know you don't have data because it's too soon. So what are your assumptions that are coming to the conclusion 2 million people will be dead by Easter? You couldn't find them. They never really even told us. Later, in an interview, Fauci alluded to some of it. Well, why didn't 2 million people die by Easter? Well, we didn't expect the American people to wash their hands. We didn't expect them to social distance. You haven't told us what the assumptions were. And so I remember 3 years ago, I was that scene in, trying to remember the name of the movie now. Outbreak. Remember the scene when McDreamy gets off the plane? He's red. He's sweating. I mean, nobody's looked sicker in their life. And what's his girlfriend do? Walks up to him and French kisses him. Was that the kind of assumptions you had in there? The people violently, deathly ill is going to be walking up to people, French kissing them? What were your assumptions? They never told us. Now, here's the defining difference. Here's why this is, in particular, this is a great DeSantis moment to show you he will stand up and he will fight. You got 2 examples coming up. This is part 1. He can fight just like Donald Trump. Maybe in some people's opinions, maybe even in mine this morning, more effectively, more eloquently. And he's got credibility. When Donald Trump was listening to Dr. Birx and Dr. Fauci, when Donald Trump was doing daily news conferences with Dr. Birx and Dr. Fauci, when Donald Trump was putting healthy Americans shelter in place and isolating them, Governor DeSantis wasn't. And he stood up to them. Now, I'm not picking sides here yet. You got 1 year and 9 months, and it's your decision and your decision only. You should hear from everybody. I'm going to give President Trump every chance to win my vote again. I'm also going to give Ron DeSantis and every other candidate a chance. But I can tell you, our governor failed. Florida's governor didn't. President Trump failed and listened to these people. Ron DeSantis didn't. He stood up to them. COVID, the economy, the border, foreign policy, that's the 4 legs of the table you ought to be staring at.
And so what I think that there's a whole bunch of other things I talk about in the book. You remember the George Floyd riots, epidemiologists, because people were saying, you've been telling people you have to stay in your home. And like in Florida, they were killing us because even in those early days, when we were following federal guidelines loosely, but we were following some, we were playing golf. I mean, the villages, they're setting record for golf. People are boating, all this stuff. Mm-hmm. They were so mad at Florida for doing that. People on the beach, all this stuff. That was their position. You are killing people if you leave your house. So then all these people are, like thousands of people are protesting. 2,000 of these epidemiologists write a letter saying, we do not condemn these protests because of COVID. Indeed, we think they're vital for public health because they're fighting racism.
Which doesn't make any sense whatsoever, right? If you really, it's kind of like, do you remember when we were having the mask arguments? Laughable, right? Our body, our choice is what they tell us with abortion all the time. Suddenly with COVID, no, you don't have a choice. I'll never forget there was a guy in Florida with waiting for a table at a restaurant, and this woman starts harassing him and his family for not wearing a mask. You're going to kill others. Your reckless behavior is going to kill innocent people. He goes, and the guy just looked at her. He was very sensible. How? Because you're not wearing a mask. Oh, so you believe the mask protects you? And she goes, yes. Then why do you care if I'm wearing a mask? You're protected. You're wearing one. Same thing with this, right? If you really believed this stuff, it wouldn't matter if it was a protest that fit your agenda and your narrative. You wouldn't be for it. It would be reckless. Doesn't matter if you're golfing without a mask or protesting without a mask. You'd have the same result from a scientist. That's dangerous if you really believed it. But notice how the narrative and the agenda viewed scientifically how they sided. Oh, no, in this case, Racism and life and death is more important than COVID. And in the end, the bombshell of this audio, Dr. Brick's on a phone with Governor DeSantis. And he says, where in history can you show me we've shelter in place and isolated the healthy? Oh, it's just an experiment we're doing in real time. As Governor DeSantis said, in a republic. That's a pretty good moment for Governor DeSantis. And if you want to look forward to what we think is going to be the showdown for the Republican nomination, that's a tough moment for Donald Trump. Because Donald Trump was listening to Fauci, was listening to Bricks, was doing daily news conferences, and was selling all of this nonsense, not science. That's advantage DeSantis. The next involves the sitting president, Joe Biden, who definitely views DeSantis as a future opponent. He's already attacking him. And I used the analogy earlier of Chris Everett. She'd give her best serve with her best spin, best speed, best location. And Martina Navratilova would come back twice as hard with twice as much spin. That's kind of how he handled whatever that lame lob was from the president. Wait till you hear how DeSantis put President Biden in his place. That's next on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Another major bank is showing weakness. We'll tell you about it coming up at 10 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Yeah, Red sent this. This is a big deal. You understand that Trump voters, when it comes to COVID-19 and the vax, side more with DeSantis than how Trump actually handled. Well, I hope that's the point I was making to everybody. That's exactly it. That's why I said, I haven't decided yet. You shouldn't have decided. You got a year and 9 months, but when it comes time to vetting, and we're talking about one of the four legs of this table, the economy, COVID, foreign policy, the border, when it comes to COVID, I would rather be working for Ron DeSantis' campaign for how he handled it in real time and for 3 years in Florida than make a case for Donald Trump, who was talking about, it's a beautiful vax, it's a wonderful vax, put it in your arm, you're going to love it. And doing these daily news conferences, this is a real challenge for Donald Trump. I'm not picking sides, but I hope I made that point crystal clear. Here's the other good moment for Ron DeSantis. So Joe Biden goes on Comedy Central and does just that, comedy with The Daily Show, discussing the transgendered issue with kids. Now, keep in mind, science that we just ignored with COVID, we ignore with this. Among girls, 9 out of 10 identify with their birth gender by the time puberty finishes. 8 out of 10 males do. So do you want to really be doing permanent things to young children with those kind of stats staring at you? Let alone the issue becomes as black and white as, are these bills protecting kids from themselves, from their woke parents, from culture? Or is it attacking them? The president thinks it's attacking them. Listen.
Transgender kids is a really harder thing. What's going on in Florida is, as my mother would say, close to sinful. I mean, it's just terrible what they're doing. It's not like, a kid wakes up one morning and says, I decided I want to become a man, or I want to become a woman, or I want to change.
Yeah, but they do wake up by the end of puberty and have it figured out with an 8 out of 10 to 9 out of 10 proclivity to go back to their gender at birth. And by then, all the procedures you would have done are irreversible.
I mean, what are they thinking about here? They're human beings.
They're human
beings.
beings.
They have feelings. They have inclinations that are, it just, to me.
Well, what did Governor DeSantis do with this? He took that video and did a split screen video showing actual procedures side by side. And then let you decide. Am I doing something close to sin to kids? Or am I protecting kids from something close to sin? If this is the beginning of the presidential battle between Joe Biden and Ron DeSantis, it's Ron DeSantis 1, Joe Biden 0. And the previous segment is Ron DeSantis 10, Donald Trump 2. And a tough climb. It was a good day for Ron DeSantis. Just saying. All right. Who's paying for all these falling banks? You are. I'll prove it next on WTN.
Ten o'clock on the dot. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. We're almost to the freezing mark here on Music Row. We're sitting at 31 degrees. Full forecast coming up in 2 minutes. Wall Street, another major bank showing weakness, and it's weighing heavy on stocks. Credit Suisse lost a quarter of its value in European trading overnight. There's also the new retail sales report showing Americans pulling back on spending by 0.4% in February. That's after surging more than 3% in January. There is also the federal investigations into the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank, which Tennessee U.S. Senator Marsha Blackburn tells WTN's Nashville's Morning News she will question Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen about during tomorrow's Finance Committee hearing.
This administration sending more money to a big blue bank in a big blue state in a big blue city that has now seen a massive failure.
Meanwhile, the Biden administration blaming Republicans for the rollback of regulatory reforms. which even some Democrats voted to do. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin at a virtual meeting with NATO allies responding to Russian fighter jets downing an unarmed U.S. surveillance drone over the Black Sea.
The United States will continue to fly and to operate wherever international law allows. And it is incumbent upon Russia to operate its military aircraft in a safe and professional manner.
Well, the Russians claiming the drone was flying southwest of the Crimean Peninsula toward Russia's border and crashed because of sharp maneuvering, and that the Russian jets never came into physical contact with that drone. Meanwhile, naval forces from China, Iran, and Russia, countries at odds with the U.S., staging joint drills in the Gulf of Oman this week. That's the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Currently at 10:03, we have sunny skies in Franklin, 38 degrees, sunny and 39 in the Juliet, down in the Boroughs, sunny and 38. Downtown on Music Road, the statues are naked. Skies are sunny, 39 degrees, feels like 36 at WTN. The market, Dow's down 522. Could be the failing banks, could be the inflation gauge. It increased 0.4%. This isn't the Joe Biden America. This is the reality of Joe Biden America. So the Dow's down 517, Nasdaq's down 129, and the S&P's down 50. S&P is down 57. All three are in the red. The market is down at 10:04. I'm Michael DelGiorno for United Structural Systems. Dad started the company. Son still runs it. We've been the go-to company for decades when it comes to concrete lifting, waterproofing, foundation repair. Over 23,000 100% satisfied residential families. A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau. Now, it begins with you. If you're seeing something suspicious, common things, I'm seeing bricks that are cracking, moisture in the crawl space or basement, leaning chimneys, bowing basement walls. Concrete's always simple. It cracks and sinks. Is it something big? Is it something minor? Well, I don't have any money to find out. Yeah, you do. When you call United Structural Systems, your inspection, your understanding, your estimate is absolutely free and no obligation. And you'd be surprised. We don't send a salesman. We send a project manager. We're in the problem-solving business. And when there's no problem, we tell you. That's peace of mind for free. And if it is a problem, you'll be glad you caught it early. While you have options and affordability. So what are you seeing? Don't be afraid to call. The inspection and estimate is free. We guarantee our best. Call USS 227-2275, 227-2275, 227-2275, online at USSTN.com. Suffer not thy Onge unto thee. Peter St Onge is a senior economic fellow at the Heritage Foundation, one of the largest think tanks in the world, a brilliant mind. And you can read his great work at heritage.org, and he has been busy doing a lot of videos of late on the concept of falling banks and who's paying for it. I guess I should start, Peter, with the... Oh, my gosh, I forgot. We have an intro for you.
Yeah.
Peter St Onge from the Heritage Foundation is with us.
money.
Well, it depends on what bank you're going to. I want to be rich. You going to start using this on your teaching videos?
I feel like this is a 1980s comedy sitcom that I'm coming on, and I'm going to have dad thoughts at the end of it.
No, I mean, this is all serious stuff. I guess we should start with the inflation gauge, increase another 0.4% in February. I mean, this is just not Joe Biden's view of America. This is the reality of America because of Joe Biden, and I can see the market's already doing about as well as some banks are doing this morning. But shocking to you?
That is right. Oh, yeah. No, this is definitely choppy. What's happening here is with the inflation still coming in, it's around 5.5%, 6% annualized, right? So inflation did not die. They tried to kill the economy. Inflation, they were not successful. They kept going until they broke something. So, now what? We've had 2 significant bank failures. These are both large banks, by the way. Mm-hmm. We may have more to come. We've got pretty close to a bank failure in Europe. That's one of the biggest banks in the whole world. So we've already got things breaking. That's pretty typical. If you raise interest rates that fast, it's pretty common that you break stuff. So at this point, they've broken it, and they still have not killed inflation. So the most likely path forward here is that they're going to give up on the fight to inflation. They're afraid now. The Fed is panicked. The Treasury is panicked.
Well, if they get afraid, what do they do?
If they get afraid, they do what they always do. They've got one tool. They've got one single solution to every problem, which is throw $1 trillion at it. That's all they got. Those were, by the way, your dollars previously, right? That all gets siphoned out of your bank account.
But that just increases inflation. But that doesn't solve inflation. Bingo. That increases it further.
That's exactly what happens. That's right. Once they get a banking crisis, they throw money at it. That new money then goes right into the pile and drives inflation back up.
You've studied this your entire life. You knew what we were up against heading into this. And by the way, you and I have talked about this several times. I think I brought it up first because I'm from New Orleans. And I can tell you levees and pumps are weakened year after decade after half century. And so was Katrina the worst hurricane? You didn't live through Betsy and Camille. It's just a weakened system when a similar hurricane arrives. You knew going in that this was at such high stakes, such high deficits, such out of control spending. There was no way to really fight inflation without going into a deep recession from the beginning. What made them think they could convince the American people there was?
Absolutely. And you and I have been talking about it for close to a year now, that what they should have done is reined in the federal government. The Fed should have played, we're not going to play ball. We're not going to give, federal government is a heroin addict. We're not going to give you a supply every day. This is not good for you. It's not good for the country. They should have stopped the federal government with these massive $1 trillion after $1 trillion in spending. That would have stopped inflation. It actually would have improved the economy. We would have had plenty of good jobs. Instead, what they did was they served their masters, right? They did not put controls on the federal government. What they did instead was crush us, the people. What they got out of that so far is a bunch of broken banks, maybe more to come.
All right, so let's go to the banks. There's a lot of narrative involved in this. And, what happens, Peter, is when things clearly become left narrative or right narrative, they get ignored. Mm-hmm. But these narratives are based in truth. It is scandalous, the ties to these board members and the Clinton machine or the Obama machine or progressive politics. That ought to make everybody uncomfortable. The diversity narrative, it should. I mean, this is a problem in corporate America today. We're trying to put together companies and employee makeup based on diversity, not expertise. So here you have board members and you got X number of lesbians, X number of trans, X number of blacks, and none of them with any banking expertise or experience. And you wonder why the bank fails. How do you sort through the narratives that everybody's talking about versus basically what really happened here and will continue to happen as long as we continue to bail out?
Yeah, and, a lot of those shenanigans go on because in order to have a big business in America today, you have got to lick the boot of government. And whatever they want, diversity, green, whatever it is they want, you as a corporation have to cater to that. You have to dance to their tune because otherwise the regulators will come after you. And so what these banks, exactly what you're saying, they've been prioritizing green garbage or diversity over competence. I don't want my airplane pilot or my bank risk manager to be chosen based on personal characteristics. I want them to be chosen based on, can they land the plane, right? And so that's the world that we're in. But the fundamental reason for it is because when the government gets too big, when it gets too much power and too much money, corporations have to obey them. They have to sit awake at night and wonder, how can I possibly please my regulator? That is not how our system is supposed to work. And then, so that was part of it, was these shenanigans. And that's something that, you're going to see that, I think, in a lot of banks going forward. The other issue here was just directly related to inflation. So the Fed, we had all this spending because the government, they were cranking out trillions of dollars post-COVID. And instead of, cutting down on federal spending, right, their solution to it was to jack up interest rates. What that ended up doing, that banks don't hold cash in the vault. They're holding treasuries in the vault. All right. When interest rates go up a whole bunch, those treasuries drop. In other words, the bank thought they had $1 in the vault. Now they've got 80 cents or maybe 60 cents. So you've got a lot of banks across America who have unrealized losses. Okay, the FDIC thinks that's about $620 billion in unrealized losses. That is coming directly from what the Fed's been doing over the past year. So Silicon Valley Bank, yes, they had a lot of shenanigans. They had the diversity, the whole thing. But what brought them down was that.
Right.
Okay, it was that the money in their vault effectively eroded. That is a real concern because that's a problem that every bank in America has.
Every bank. That's why there's going to be more. But to our other narrative point, if you had bankers, people on the board with expertise, they could have anticipated. Well, let me ask you, could they have anticipated?
Right.
What would a good bank be doing right now, keeping an eye on this to avoid being like Silicon Valley?
Yeah, a good bank would be, watching its loan portfolio, being prudent on lending. They don't have an incentive to do that, especially now with this bailout that just came out. The banks don't have an incentive because they know if they win, they keep the winnings. If they lose, the taxpayers will pick it up.
Exactly.
That's what happens. And, the first rule in finance is higher risk, higher return. Okay, so the banks have an automatic incentive to make risky loans because they can charge more for it. All right, so if you are backing these guys up with the taxpayer, they are going to get too risky. It's like water flows down hills. Banks will get risky if you're covering their losses.
Peter St Onge joining us from the Heritage Foundation. We don't have a full hour today, so we're going to move briskly. I want to do this from two different angles. The first angle is make it clear to everybody who's picking up the tab for all of this debt, for all of this printing, and for all of these bailouts.
Yeah, so the first thing, the important thing is everybody is going to be covered up to $250,000. All right, so unless you're a millionaire, you don't have to go to the bank, you don't have to take your money out, you don't have to go to the ATM. All right, so everybody is going to be covered. Now, where is that money going to come out of? And the answer is, number one, any failed bank, okay, when they cover that with FDIC, what that means is that they are raiding every other bank account in America to pay for it. All right, when you've got money in the bank,
right?
You are paying an insurance premium. Yep.
Right, of its members. That's why it says member FDIC. So, yeah, other bank
That's
members.
Exactly it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that means that every year you pay about $1 on 1,000 in insurance. That goes to FDIC. All right, so if they have to bail out a bunch of banks, then they're going to crank that up. They call it a levy, and they're going to take that out of your bank account. All right, so that could be a couple dollars on every 1,000 you have in there. The next step, if that's not enough, is that, and we saw this in 2009, the next step is they go to Treasury, and they say to Treasury, hey, we're going to need more money. In 2009, they got lending authority for $500 billion from Treasury. That is direct taxpayer money that goes right on the national debt. It comes right out of tax revenue, so we all get to pay for that. And then the third thing now is the inflation. Right, so the money it takes to bail these guys out, the fact that the Fed is now afraid to hike rates, okay, you put those two together, and we're probably going to see a return to the kind of inflation that we saw last year.
Yeah. So, and So do you go interest rates higher even then? I mean, the bottom line is, I think what you just said there that's key is what we've been trying to teach for 9 months. The biggest tax is inflation, and you're feeling it right now. And you're going to feel it worse again. For the longest time, through the 80s and then into the 90s, especially when everything was so out of control spending and materialistic, people didn't view it. They viewed debt as something, of course, nothing compares to once we get to Obama. I mean, Obama doubles the debt in 8 years. Oh, yeah. It took 200 plus years to do. And then it didn't get any better under Trump, and it hasn't gotten any better since COVID under Joe Biden. In fact, it's doubled again. So you basically tripled your debt. You're living something right now that we used to talk about in horror stories that you've never lived before. So I think, people used to think, well, the kids will have to pay for that down the road. No, you're paying for it right now in inflation. Every time you go to the grocery store and every time you buy something or every time you buy something with a credit card, you're paying for it. And you're paying for it in your bank fees, and you're paying for it in deficit and debt with your tax dollar. The bottom line is, can I just say, and I know it's overgeneralized, the taxpayers are ultimately on the hook. It's your money the Silicon Valley banks are covering their rear ends with. And there's no incentive for them to self-regulate, and they're so woke and diverse. They're, to Tucker Carlson's credit, they're having parties and woke speakers come in and all right before they fail, but they should have been focused on banking, not diversity. All that's true, but the bottom line is we're on the hook for this, and only we can stop it.
You're on the hook out of your taxes. You're on the hook out of your life savings, out of your bank account. You're on the hook out of your grocery bill. If somebody is getting bailed out, somebody's paying for it. So who's paying for it? Well, for 50 years now, it's us. All of it rolls downhill to us.
Peter, you did a video on, is the FDIC bailout a bailout? How could we do a 1-minute version of that right now for me? It was brilliant.
Yeah, just real quick, that's where it's coming from. They're going to raid your bank account first. Second, they raid Treasury, which means your taxes. Third, they raid the inflation. They just pump out the money. The Fed's got a giant counterfeit machine. They'll crank out as many trillions as it takes. And, where does that show up? On your grocery bill. It comes out of your pensions. If you've got a fixed income, if you've got some life savings, that is going to come out of all of that. So
by the way,
it is going to be a bailout of many stripes.
Yeah, it's not just the bailout to the bank. It's a bailout, a bailout, a bailout, a bailout, and you're paying for all the bailouts. All right, but here's the bottom line I wanted to make. Rather than the future saying, remember when we said this? I want everybody to remember everything he just ran down right there. Because it's going to start trickling in the news a little bit every day. You're going to hear these news stories about this is happening. This has been triggered. They're doing this. Just remember, when we talk about this stuff, it's always before it. We said at the beginning of this, there's only one way. If you're not going to get the government to control its spending, you're going to try to manipulate people to stop spending. So you're going to raise interest rates, and then their credit cards are going to get maxed out. Then they're going to get late, and they're going to get late on their mortgages. And this is how the whole collapse happens, and we've laid it out. Does this change your view as to whether or not we're in a recession yet?
It doesn't change my view. Banking crises, they are frequent in recessions. They don't necessarily directly lead to the recession. I think what's more likely is, we are probably going to get a more severe recession. The Fed is like a deer frozen in the headlights. And so, I think there is more pain to come. We're still going to be floating along for a couple months here on the previous inflation, and I think that the sort of end game on this is getting worse and worse. What I'm really concerned about is, if we go back to 2008, what really launched the 2008 crisis was things that nobody was paying attention to. Okay, it was collateralized debt obligations. Nobody even knew what those were. Literally on Wall Street, they did not know what those things were. And that's what blew up the system. And so my concern at this point is, we can see bank runs. Are there other ghosts in the machine? Are there other gremlins hiding in there that nobody knows about? The financial system outplays regulators at every turn. So when they put these regulations on to make banks, quote unquote, unsafe, there are a million ways that they get around that. And that's really my concern, is what clever little things, what little presents have they inserted into the system?
No, Peter, it's brilliant because it's like when I'm talking foreign policy and your colleague James Carafano is always quick to remind everybody of this, and I've learned it from him. Your enemy has a say too. And so, rarely do things go as they're planned. And so, they're gonna have a say in all of this. All right, I want to spend our last 2 minutes on this. What if we didn't bail them out?
I would prefer we didn't. The rules of the game as they stand before Biden got involved here, the longstanding rules of the game are the widows and orphans get covered, regular Americans get covered, right? FDIC goes up to $250,000. Everybody after that, all the rich guys, they have to wait for FDIC resolution. Basically, the FDIC breaks up the bank and sells it to another bank. Typically, you lose about 15 to 20 cents on your dollar if you're a rich guy. Good enough. Serves you right. Should have been paying attention. And then the institution itself, just gets sold off. This is what a healthy banking system would do. It would work it out without bailing out a bunch of rich Silicon Valley guys using the taxpayers' dime. And, what I'd like to see in the long run is us moving towards a system that is actually not liable to collapse all the time. So that would be something called full reserve banking. That means that your checking deposit is fully backed by cash. The bank actually has the money in the vault. And then your savings account would probably look something like a CD. So it's 1 to 3 month loan, something like that. If you made that change, and by the way, CDs are paying 4.5% right now. So you would be making a lot more money on your bank account switching to full reserve. That would end it once and for all. We wouldn't even care about FDIC anymore because banks would not be failing.
Peter, is that kind of like fair tax? It's or a balanced budget or term limits? Obviously, it would fix it, so obviously it'll never happen?
Well, that's the system we had for a very long time in this country.
I know. God forbid we return to it.
And over the past 100 years, they've corrupted it. So, right, we always talk about the government spending and how that's the way to solve inflation, and, they don't want that because that would solve it once and for all.
So my vocation is awakening and mentoring and or discipling. My career is radio. My job is talk show host. Of all the things I talk about, I would think culture war and military wars and foreign policy are probably my greatest strengths. Yours is clearly economic. Now you understand why 8 months ago I said to you, this is going to be a long, deep recession. I need someone. Yes. I don't care. I can't control the world. I don't have a national show, and I'm not a dictator. I can make sure if my audience is interested, they can be awakened, they can understand, and they can understand what's coming. And I think you see the urgency, the room on fire I felt 9 months ago, and I think it's about to get a hell of a lot hotter. And that's why I am so grateful you find this time for us. At some point, I have these nightmares that you're walking around with your friends. This guy in radio in Nashville, now he's up to an hour a week. I should be getting paid for this.
But I have faith in you, Michael. You're going national soon enough.
Well, no, it's not that. We're headed. These are all the birth. These are the birth pains have begun, and what's being birthed is a very deep recession. So I hope people are enjoying this journey of understanding. Is there any good news?
That's the thing. Yep.
Is there any bright side to this?
Well, we still have a fair amount of freedom here. People can still prepare themselves. It's not like the recession came all at once. So we still have a couple months, maybe longer. So protect yourself. Keep an eye on, your spending, your job, your family, your network, what's important to you.
Appreciate this every time. All right, go prepare for your meeting. We'll talk next week. Peter St Onge is a senior fellow, economic fellow at the Heritage Foundation. You can read his brilliant work. I'd go sign up for his Twitter account. You'll get these little short videos that I get. In the meantime, you'll read his great work at heritage.org. It's 1025.
Another bank showing weakness, and U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin telling our NATO allies about Russia downing one of our surveillance drones. These stories and more coming up at 10:30 on Super Talk.
Another bank bites the dust.
WTN.
Boom, boom. Another bank bites the dust. I said another one's gone, and another one's gone.
Another one bites the dust. Hey, gonna get you too.
Well, yeah. There, see, got all our Tourette's out of our system. David Zanotti is going to join us. I think I can't win for losing on this. I just got a great email. That's not why I'm saying I can't win for losing. But Betty was writing that she was at church this morning and the priest was doing the homily on this whole Joe Biden audio over. This is as close to sin as my mother would say. I mean, now suddenly doing irreparable harm and mutilating children's bodies is sin. Trying to stand in the way of that is sin. And ignoring creation. Don't forget, just ignoring science. We know that 9 out of 10 girls who think they're transgendered go back to their original birth assignment by the time puberty's over. 8 out of 10 boys do. You're doing irreparable harm to people that, if you still feel this way at 18, that's one thing, But Joe Biden attacks and calls it sin, and it's the first exchange with DeSantis. And then we have the DeSantis revelation of Dr. Birx and Fauci and what they were trying to get Florida to do and how they admitted just shelter in place the healthy was an experiment in a republic. These are huge. This is where I can't win for losing. These are huge early victories for Ron DeSantis in a game of chess that people don't realize we're playing. Because there are more Donald Trump supporters who were anti-mask, anti-vax, anti-COVID, realize how it was the beginning of manipulation and control that led to the destruction of our economy. And they're going to be on DeSantis' side, not Trump's. This is a powerful early political analysis. So I'm going to bring on a powerful political analyst and ally. David Zanotti joins us from the American Policy Roundtable on the DeSantis-Trump-Biden early race next on WTN.
I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories, and we are finally warming up. Guess the sun got high enough. 39 degrees right now on Music Row. Full forecast in 2 minutes. Another major bank showing weakness, and it's one of the reasons for sharp declines on Wall Street this morning. The Dow tanking more than 500 points at the opening bell after Credit Suisse lost a quarter of its wealth during European trading overnight. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin in a virtual meeting with NATO leaders says Russia's downing of a U.S. surveillance drone over the Black Sea yesterday is reckless.
This hazardous episode is a part of a pattern of aggressive and risky and unsafe actions by Russian pilots in international airspace.
Russia claims it never touched that drone. New safety tests focusing on the back seats of midsize SUVs finds more safety issues exist in the second row than up front because of a lack of advanced seatbelt systems and better seat designs. That's the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. Have you ever thought about why we invest in the stock market? Well, you often hear because we want to protect ourselves from inflation. Well, what is inflation? It's prices going up. Who's raising prices? Companies. What do you own when you own stocks? You own the companies raising prices, so it helps protect us from that. The other thing is this. Think about the most successful people you know. They're typically business owners, and you get to be a business owner when you invest in the stock market. Now, if we think about the stock market, a lot of people worry about, well, what if the stock market drops and it never comes back? Well, this is another thing that I like to explain to people. If the stock market goes down and it never comes back, what does that mean? That means that earnings went down and they never came back up again. So earnings went down. If earnings go down, what else goes down? Taxes go down. If taxes go away, what else goes away? The government goes away. If the government goes away, the FDIC goes away. So think about it. Everything is built on the stock market. That's why I don't ever worry about the stock market going down. Everybody has the same goal in mind when stocks go down. Get it to come back up because we got to get earnings to come back up. Now, you have two things at your control to get earnings to come back up. One is sales. We can change what we're selling or sell more of whatever we have if we can. And if we can't do that, we can reduce our expenses. And that's exactly what companies do. You'll notice that they lay off people when things get bad, and hence that is why the stock market has recovered from every downturn throughout all of history. Now, if you want to learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call or call 615-851-1950.
All right, currently at 10:36. It's beginning to slowly warm up. Sunny, 41 at the Puffy Muffin in Brentwood, 42 to the north in Hendersonville. Downtown on Music Row, Sunsplash Naked Statues, 41 degrees. It feels like 37 at WTN. The market, obviously responding to the inflation numbers, obviously responding to the more rumors of failing banks. The Dow is down 546, 31,609. NASDAQ down 113 at 11,314. And the S&P's down 57 at 3861. That takes care of all the gains from yesterday and then some. The market is down at 1036. Hey, look, if you want to feel good about yourself and look great, this can be the year. If you're curious, if you're self-conscious, you can grow your hair back. We Grow Hair, PAI Medical, is right in the heart of Middle Tennessee and Brentwood. We have the finest surgeons, latest technology and results. We have many, many non-surgical solutions that also really work. None of that should surprise you. We're an epicenter of entertainment in Music City. So we have the best doctors, technology, and results. We also are the only company in Tennessee with PAI's multi-unit hair grafting procedure. Trademark procedure gives you more hair in one procedure, thus saving you time and money, and no one else has it, backed by the only company I trust. Your looks are simply too important to go anywhere else. And it all begins with a free consultation. Will this work for you? Should you do surgical, non-surgical, what procedure? It's absolutely free, no obligation. Call today and set up your private consultation. PAI Medical, We Grow Hair in Brentwood. Call 376-6010. 376-6010. Natural results from a company you can trust. 376-6010 or online at wegrowhair.com.
Please.
That's not the hey, Fat Albert, is it?
Now this is
Metallica.
Metallica.
Well, no, but I mean, what's the one I always go, hey, it's Fat Mikey.
It's similar.
It is similar.
So because this is kind of a little more Mission Impossible-y. A little bit. Yeah, a little Mission Impossible. Yes, boys, I got Tourette's, boys. All right. I'm trying to hold it together. Yesterday, we got too silly, and I know Mandis chose that to be the air check show.
He just chose it randomly, brother.
He just chose it randomly to make me look bad. David Zanotti is the CEO of the American Policy Roundtable. He's also the host of the Public Square, heard on 200 stations, including this one. And he joins us less often, but we treasure every moment we have with him. And today's a good day. I'm going to do the disclaimer for both of us, can I?
Sure.
And that is, I don't hate Donald Trump. I loved his policies, his presidency. I don't think he was perfect. I think he made listen to some really wrong people on COVID. I think His policies were great. His tone, his divisive style wasn't the greatest. But it's a year and 8 months. Everybody should decide. I want you to vet Donald Trump. I'm looking for Donald Trump 2.0, and if he doesn't show it for me, he's not going to win my vote. You should look at Ron DeSantis. I think Vivek is great. I think you ought to look at, I'm trying to think who else is in. Nikki Haley. There's nobody else that's officially in yet. And DeSantis technically isn't officially in. I want you to look at all these people, and you have time to do it. And don't worship any of them. They're all just human beings. Listen for ideas. Listen for solutions. Listen for the ability to win hearts and minds and articulate their position. All right, there's the disclaimer. This was a really good week for Ron DeSantis, and it sets up a really, I'm not going to say checkmate, but a very difficult chess position for Donald Trump. I know you're not going to be able to hear this, but I know I sent it to you and you've reviewed it. I'm going to play for the audience a visit that Ron DeSantis had with Glenn Beck and the bombshell he drops concerning COVID, and then it will lead to my first question. So for those who didn't hear it earlier, this is Governor DeSantis visiting with Glenn Beck, and he drops this bombshell.
So the White House task force was hammering me for like the first really 3 months because they wanted me to be clamping down harder, and she, so I called. I was like, Deborah, just tell me, when in American history modern has this been done, and what were the results? Because I kind of feel like we're flying blind here, and we may.
When was this done in history, and what were the results? I feel like we're flying blind here. Governor DeSantis having instinctively the same instincts you and I had, David. Since when have we ever quarantined the healthy? And then here comes.
I'm with you.
All right, and here comes the answer.
Be doing things that could be damaging. And she said, she's like, it's kind of our own science experiment that we're doing in real time. And that didn't sit well with me. No. I mean, you're a citizen of a republic. You're not a guinea pig. And so what I think that there's a whole bunch of other things I talk about in the book. You remember the George Floyd riots when the epidemiologists.
Thinking of the riot, and then all the epidemiologists and the virologists said, it's okay for them to all gather and riot and protest because it'll ultimately save us from racism. But I mean, if you believe in COVID, you believe that would be a super spreader as well. David, this was pure politics, pure control, a pure experiment. Here's the political question. For most Donald Trump supporters, they're anti-mask, anti-vax, or a lot of them are anti how the government weaponized this. They might find their better candidate in DeSantis, because while DeSantis was standing against all this nonsense, our governor wasn't, and Donald Trump was standing up daily in news conferences with Dr. Birx and Dr. Fauci, listening to everything they said and calling it a beautiful this and a beautiful that. This is a real problem for Donald Trump come primary season, isn't it?
First off, Michael, I want to make it clear.
You're doing a double disclaimer?
Yes, the double disclaimer. I'm going to double down disclaimer. The reason that I've been on the program less and less the last few weeks is solely my fault, not yours, nor the management of WTN. Lest anyone think there's a conspiracy or a somehow discord between us.
No, David just has another job that pays him. We don't.
Well,
no, you've been very busy.
And helping quality talk radio hosts around the country and stations is a part of that job. And so I'm delighted to do it. But working out of the Florida office, we've got a network of stations in Florida that demand help and time. And I've just been so busy. And plus with all the different things that have been going. So it's my fault, not yours, number one. Number two, what a program you have put together already so far today. I have so many notes from your last half hour.
Yeah,
that we could keep that conversation going. So I hope we've got a little bit of time.
Yeah, we do.
I could talk to you all day.
No, I can't. I'm leaving at noon, whether you like it or not. No, I'm kidding.
Okay, whether or not you're sticking around.
No, but you and I were doing all this in real time. This is a bombshell. You mean to tell me Dr. Birx picks up the phone, she's harassing a governor in a sovereign state over things he's doing. He's just like, well, wait a minute. Tell me, as a doctor, when have we ever quarantined the healthy, and what were the results? And she goes, well, it's just an experiment we're doing in real time in a republic. Let me tell you something. DeSantis handled COVID better than Donald Trump. That's going to come up in a primary, I think.
Well, he handled it better than Donald Trump, better than Mike Pence, better than Bill Lee, better than Mike DeWine, better than almost anyone in the country. But it's another disclaimer, which is to protect my friend's backside, if you will. Not many radio show hosts have the courage to air an interview that someone else did that's a competitor.
I don't care. We're not competitors.
For real time.
We serve the same God. We serve the same cause, and we're pursuing the same thing, truth. So
okay.
God bless them.
Yeah, and not everyone in radio management and radio.
Oh, I may get in trouble, but I just wanted to play it.
The point is I admire that for this simple reason. I'm going to do the same thing on the Public Square radio broadcast. We are going to seek right now to get every possible way to get major pieces of this content onto our broadcast with permission. And the reason that we're doing it is not because of Glenn Beck, but because this is one of the most insightful interviews I have ever heard with a seated governor who has any aspirations for the presidency in 43 years. This interview changes everything.
I didn't want to. Why? First, let me just say, I said 15 minutes ago. I'm not going to say checkmate, but this is a big move on a chessboard that's going to play out, and this is the first shelling of a war, and it looks very, very aggressive. So yeah, tell us why. Break it down.
Let me throw another bombshell into this conversation. People know who listen to the Public Square that we had the privilege at the end of his life, at last years of David McCullough's life, to develop a friendship with David and Rosalie, his dear wife, who's also passed away, and Mike Hill, who's still living. He's a young man.
I have to interrupt. Historian, author,
David
expert
McCullough,
on President Washington Adams. Yeah.
Right. The movie John Adams, without a doubt, the best-selling historian of the end of the 20th century, or the beginning of the 21st century. Okay, David McCullough is a legend in the field. Now, he's not categorized as a conservative because he lived a life that was largely apolitical in regards to the political parties. But we have friends who are not all conservative, okay? That doesn't mean that they don't influence us. I listen to them, but my prayer and hope is that we can rub off on them. I mean, if all we ever do is talk to the choir, where are we going to go? So we've got to win the public debate. So we have friends all across the board. And watch this now. David McCullough could not stand Donald Trump. Now you say, well, that's because McCullough was a liberal. No, McCullough wasn't a liberal. He didn't like Donald Trump because Donald Trump didn't read books. Because Donald Trump was not naturally curious and inquisitive in regards to American history, and in regards to our civil government and our form of law. Trump was fundamentally illiterate on the key questions of how we got here. Now, he has phenomenal business instincts, and he's very, very successful. Doesn't make him a bad person. It just makes him run at an extraordinary deficit trying to lead a civil government that is built upon knowledge.
You're
he doesn't have it.
You're obviously being very, very careful, but I want to make sure this is too important of a point to have anybody miss it. I'll say it, and they can hate me, and I don't care if you hate me. First of all, I was very supportive. I voted for Donald Trump twice. Once he won. When he won, his policies did everything. I mean, I would challenge you this way. What did Donald Trump do that wasn't in the Republican Party platform? Nothing. He just had the courage to do it, and that was great. How he did it, how he said it, how he explained it was rarely great. When it came to COVID, it was a major failure. All right, he listened to him when he said it was nothing and made a buffoon out of himself, and then he listened to him when he panicked him that millions were going to die by Easter, and that was wrong. The bottom line is there's a big difference. I'm going to be very blunt here, and people are going to hate me. From a winning hearts and minds level of knowledge and eloquence, when you sit down and you listen to Ron DeSantis be peppered, there's a big difference between that and Sarah Palin or that and Donald Trump. That's what we're saying out loud. But this is a checkmate position that's going to play out because it may have been luck. It may have been pure rebellion and luck. But the president of the United States was duped by Fauci, duped by Dr. Birx. This guy wasn't. And that's going to be one of the four legs of the table that this whole campaign is about. A failed economy, Trump will do fine with. But failures of COVID, failures of border, Trump will do fine with. Foreign policy, Trump will do fine with. If any leg of Trump's table gets kicked out, it's going to be COVID. And this is where DeSantis, if he continues this type of performance, is going to have the upper hand. And that's all it takes is to kick one leg, David. And guess where our lunch is? On the floor.
Well, and you took it 2 steps there. And let's remember, Mike Pence qualifies under that same category because he was every bit as involved.
Oh, my gosh.
Okay.
You know what? There's the ultimate insult. I forgot he's even in.
All right. So here we are. And let me just double back for a second. Before we get to the COVID leg of that table, which is fundamental, and you're exactly right, I want to go back to this. One of the things that stunned me, I almost fell out of my chair when I listened to someone who is a seated governor and a successful governor who actually was quoting from Federalist number 51, and he knew what he was talking about. Now, that's not because I've got academic credentials or because I spent my whole life studying history, because David McCullough was my friend and history's my thing. No, it's because if you don't know where you came from, you can't possibly
figure
out where you're going.
By the way,
you have no context.
Let me give you the example. Notice the throwaway line. All right, so your first a person that doesn't understand we're not a democracy, somebody that really has the context of what our nation fundamentally was, and what makes it unique. You wouldn't say that doing experiment in real time, and then the throwaway line in a republic with its citizens as the guinea pigs.
You are not. He said you are a citizen of a republic, not a guinea pig in a science experiment. Game over.
That's
game over. Those are terms that should have prevailed from the start.
Well, it's what guided us. Now, we had Dr. Chuck was huge. I mean, you and I might have made some, you brought up I'm always saying this. You want to know an intelligent person? You'll never find an intelligent person who isn't obsessed with curiosity. Curiosity leads to intelligence. And Dr. Chuck is that way. But, Ron DeSantis, this is a big moment nobody's catching. You're going to catch it, but you're going to catch it when it happens. Because trust me, sooner or later it comes down to Trump and DeSantis, and this leg's going to get kicked out.
Triple down on the disclaimer. I will view the Trump presidency as one of the most unique moments in American history.
He's your Truman.
I will say it out loud.
He's your Truman.
Thank God that he won and Hillary didn't. We have a tremendous debt to pay for that man's courage to step up and do the right thing, and for the American voters having the courage to recognize the difference. But it's been a long time since then in the shelf life of the American argument. And we need someone who gets it at its deepest core. Now, understand something. If Donald Trump's reelected, it will also be the most fascinating second term of a presidency we have ever seen.
Well, because it's 2 firsts for one. He'll literally get two first 100 days. He'll get a chance to make America great. They'll break it. He'll make it back great, and then hand it to somebody for 8 years. I mean, nobody's picking sides here. I watched that video and I went, "This is a moment." Now, it's a moment that hasn't happened.
You got it right.
But the prophet in me, where the room's on fire for me, and it's a beautiful day for everyone else, and the air conditioning's working. I want you to know that down the road, this primary is between Donald Trump and Governor DeSantis. Everybody else could have a say in what the conversation is. They might have a say in a cabinet position. They might have a say on a ticket. But the next nominee of the Republican Party is going to be Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis. And this is one of 4 legs. And if I worked for Donald Trump, I don't have an answer for this. And I don't suspect he will, other than a criticism. That's a big moment. That this governor didn't listen to Fauci, didn't listen to Birx, and Trump did. And that's where Trump made all of his mistakes. That's going to be a tough thing to explain when this comes down to one-on-one for the nomination. More with David Zanotti in a moment. I want to talk to you about Blue Umbrella Medical of Middle Tennessee. If you're frustrated with healthcare that's really sick care, and I am, no answers, no relief, just some new diagnosis you're stuck living with. I want you to know that Dr. Jay Hitson and her team, including an MD, are different. First of all, we're all waiting for you, physical therapists, doctors, holistic doctor. We're all waiting for you. We're not going to send you to 10 different places. That's integrative care. The second thing that makes us different is state-of-the-art lab testing. We're going to get you real answers. That's what you came for. And once we get the real answers, then we're going to dive deep with advanced diagnostic equipment to get to the root cause. Then we're going to treat the root cause with cutting-edge regenerative treatments. You're going to get results, finally. Take neuropathy, acute, chronic, and crippling. Those cutting-edge regenerative treatments treating the root cause are able to stimulate, reactivate, and regenerate the damaged tissue area. You feel better, real results, lasting results, covered by insurance, and begins with a free consultation. So if you or someone you love or care for is suffering from neuropathy, actual health care with real results awaits you. Blue Umbrella Medical Center of Middle Tennessee. Call today and set up your free consultation. 610-6937, 610-6937, or online at blueumbrellamedical.com.
11 o'clock on the dot this Wednesday morning. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. We're up to 40 degrees now on Music Row, headed for the mid-50s, and I don't think we're going to be back to below freezing overnight for at least a couple of more days. May have some rain during the day to talk about during the full forecast in 2 minutes. Trouble in the skies and on the runways in America. Planes nearly colliding more frequently, seemingly. M. Nguyen reports from Washington.
The Federal Aviation Administration is holding a safety summit to review the string of close calls this year. Officials are looking at staffing, key patterns, and risk factors to identify and implement new actions aimed at maintaining aviation safety. This comes as the agency announced it's investigating another incident from last week at the airport near Washington, D.C., saying a Republic Airlines flight crossed a runway without clearance just after a United flight had been cleared for takeoff from the same runway.
Wall Street, another major bank showing weakness, weighing down stocks. The Dow sank more than 500 points at the opening bell on word that Credit Suisse lost a quarter of its value during European trading overnight. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen testifies before the Senate Finance Committee tomorrow. Tennessee U.S. Senator Marsha Blackburn will be among members who will be asking questions about the Silicon Valley Bank collapse. And she says why they were so fast to insure everyone, even above the FDIC level threshold of $250,000, will all be getting their money back.
Instead of being the guarantor of last resort, this administration is jumping to the front of the line and saying we're going to be the guarantor of first resort.
Meanwhile, the Biden administration blaming Republicans for the collapse, saying that it was the rollback of regulatory reforms under the Trump administration, when even some Democrats voted to do it too. A stupid mistake. That's what the Biden administration says happened when a Russian fighter jet brought down one of our drones over the Black Sea. National Security Advisor to the President, John Kirby.
We're not minimizing this. I mean, you don't bring in the Russian ambassador because you're failing to take something seriously. We are taking it seriously, and the message was, don't do this again.
Well, Russia claims they never touched the drone, and it was heading toward their border, and now Russia says they're going to recover it. That's the latest news. Weather's
Wait a
next.
minute. This just in? Yes, I can go with it. The Biden administration has grounded Vladimir Putin. He's grounded for 2 weeks. No television or phone. Just wrong today.
That'll give him the what for?
Listen, I respect. I did mornings for most of my career. Thank God, not for the last 16 years. It's a tough life. But we're finally coming to Murfreesboro. And while I respect your need to sleep, come on, how far can you be from the Parthenon Grill? You should join us.
I'll be in Tulsa. I'm on vacation that week.
You're on vacation that week? Oh, for crying out loud. Do you know what? I am so scarred from a documentary last night, I don't even think I could eat a Ron's cheeseburger today.
All right. Was it about hamburger meat?
It was everything. Poultry, hamburger, the food industry in general.
Yeah.
And the way they treat the cows, the pigs, and the chickens. I'm just so mad at everybody. I don't want to eat. But
yep.
We believe that all of the sirloin that will be served at the Parthenon Grill was loved and cared for right up until its demise.
Yes, sir.
We're going to be in Murfreesboro, which I think that's what I am far and away the most excited about. These are a lot of our most loyal listeners, and we just don't get there enough. And so Dan Mandis, Matt Murphy, Brian Wilson, and myself will be there for an evening with WTN on March the 30th at the Parthenon Grill. We've got wonderful. Go to the website and get all the details. You have choice between chicken and steak and all the sides. I don't want to turn into a waiter. It is shamelessly, I'll cut to the chase, shamelessly our desire to you get to listen to us every day and feel like you know us. It's a thrill for us to finally get to know you. So this is our way of coming to you. I don't even know why we bother to do the 1 hour discussion. Why don't we just mingle and talk to people? I don't get that part, but
that's
okay.
a good idea. And eat.
Just eat and get to know each other.
Yeah.
And I warn everybody, I'm a hugger. So I hugged during COVID. I'll hug after COVID. But I am thrilled to be coming to the borough along with Matt Murphy, Dan Mandis, and Brian Wilson. We would love to have you join us. Dinner comes with a drink ticket. If you need anything in the form of gummies, I know who to send you to. But we'll see you at the Parthenon Grill in Murfreesboro. All the details and your ability to buy tickets are online at 997WTN.com. More with David Zanotti in a moment. News was brought to you by All right, currently at 11:07, we have bright sunshine, 43 degrees in Franklin, 44 in Mount Juliet, 43 down in the borough, downtown on Music Row, sunny and 44. It feels like 39 in Nashville at WTN. The market's a disaster. So the Dow is down 629 at 31,517. I should do this. I haven't done this in a long, long time. Last time we were at 31,500. October of last year. So we're getting Bidenized tremendously by the moment. Dow's down 638, NASDAQ's down 127, and the S&P is down 69. All three are in the red. The market is dramatically down. That's the bad news. Jeff Eddy's Efficient Heating and Cooling of Tennessee, simply the best and the most affordable, whether it's maintenance, repair, or replacement. This is the only company I've used for my heating and air for going on 14 years now. And the best part is not my opinion. They do residential, light commercial, service all brands, all technologies, conventional and geothermal. They're recognized by Rheem, one of the leading brands, as providing customers with the highest level of year-round comfort and service. What a great description for what I've enjoyed for a decade and a half. They're an Elite Pro partner with Rheem. They're a diamond contractor with Mitsubishi, and they're A-plus rated by the Better Business Bureau, licensed, insured, and bonded for all. When it comes to maintenance, and you should do your air conditioners in the spring because summer comes, the air conditioner turns on, stays on. It's either ready to work efficiently or it's ready to break. We're going to clean it up, check it all out, maintenance it. It can't exceed $125 a home, no matter how many units you have. And I have 3, but no matter how many you have, can't be more than $125. You'll get that back in energy efficiency, but you'll avoid hundreds on repair and thousands on early replacement. It's smart to do, and now is the time. And Efficient Heating and Cooling of Tennessee is the place. Call 784-4424 today, 784-4424, or online at efficienthvac.net. I don't know. Should we do a disclaimer of our disclaimer of our disclaimer? We're so happy to have David Zanotti with us today from the American Policy Roundtable and host of The Public Square. Heard on 200 stations. It's not our intent to rile up all the Trump supporters. In fact, David knows the way I always say it. I think I really believe this. Donald Trump and John F. Kennedy are the only 2 presidents that weren't supposed to happen. And they both had an indelible mark on our nation. And so we're very grateful for Donald Trump's presidency. We don't have, a bet on this in any way to root. If Donald Trump gets the nomination and Donald Trump gets reelected, that's going to be unique. A guy who fixed America, then had it broken for 4 years and went right back into office to refix it. That gets exciting. A president that gets 2, in essence, first terms, 2 first 100 days, that can get exciting. I think the one thing that we acknowledge is there's a lot of people in the field, and you should vet all of them, and every one of them deserve your time and consideration. And then you have a right to choose whomever you want. I mean, I don't make apologies for that. If I decide to vote for Ron DeSantis, that's none of your business. And there's nothing wrong with me in making that choice. And if I decide to vote for Donald Trump, there's nothing wrong with me. I would just say something very significant has happened. And I think, can I tell a quick story, David, that'll really set the tone for where I think both of our hearts are at.
Last time I checked, it's your show. You can say anything you want to say. Sure.
Well, I know, but I want to get to you. So I really believe that this house.
But I'm having a good time listening. Keep going.
Okay. Well, I believe this house was a gift from God, a reward from God. I really do. And I have no other earthly explanation for why this house was on the market almost 1,000 days and why it went down $300 and something thousand for me to get it. And it's now tripled in value. All right. But that isn't even the story financially, because I don't focus on finances and God supplies my needs. But I'm telling you, this house is as if I built it for my family years before my family ever existed. It's just perfect. I'll never forget, at one point I said, well, everything's perfect, but I got nowhere to shoot baskets with Nick. That front yard, that driveway isn't going to work. And I opened the back door and there's a basketball court. I mean, God had every detail. Even this room I'm sitting in right now made no sense to me. Eventually, after COVID, I realized God knew what this room was going to be for. I mean, it's an amazing testimony. I don't want to bore everybody with that. But I want to say this house was so perfect for me. I was waiting for something to go wrong. There's got to be something I don't know about why it's still on the market. So I looked at Andrew at one point. I said, we're going to find something out probably in the inspection. Don't get too excited yet. There's something wrong with this house. So the inspector's here. I'm walking around the empty house that's echoing. Mr. DelGiorno, come down here. I go down below the house. Do you see this? And I'm thinking he's found something. You see this? They don't do this anymore. Let me tell you why this is great. And that's how it was all day long. Let me show you this. Builders don't do this anymore. You're going to love this. And here I'm waiting for something bad to happen. I got to be honest with everybody, having done my disclaimer. I keep waiting for there to be something wrong about Governor DeSantis. I keep waiting for him to blow it in an interview.
Yeah.
Show me he's not as knowledgeable as I think he is. Show me he's not as convicted as he appears to be, passionate as he appears to be, steadfast as he appears to be. I keep looking for a chink in this armor. And then this interview with Glenn Beck, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a long fly ball, deep center field. This one's out of here. I mean, a home run. And in this particular case, because it's been 20 minutes now since we were talking about it, it's not a checkmate, but it's a big chess move. Donald Trump was listening to Fauci. He was listening to Bricks. He was all for the vaccine. He was all for the masks. He was on daily news conferences. It's a beautiful vaccine. You're going to love this vaccine. Stick this vaccine in I'd put it in my eye if I were you. It's such a beautiful vaccine. I mean, he was doing all this. And DeSantis was like, no, we're a republic. We don't do experiments. We don't shelter in place the healthy. So on the issue of COVID, and where most Donald Trump supporters are, Governor DeSantis did you right. President Trump didn't. That's got to play out at some place down the road. It's a big moment. It's a grounded moment in history and civics and our Constitution and our intent. Ron DeSantis, not just as a governor, as a speaker, is starting. Remember, we saw Rubio was Kennedy. Your guy Trump was Truman. DeSantis is starting to feel like Reagan to me. I don't know where this is headed, but he had a really nice moment with Glenn Beck. Really nice moment, if that's the beginning.
And Michael, let me go back now to the second or third level of disclaimer that we had. You talked about who you'd vote for. Let me explain to your listeners and to ours, because there's people all over the country listening to this broadcast, and I appreciate the opportunity.
The disclaimer, Rob.
I will not be voting in the Republican primary because I'm an independent. So I don't have a dog in this race. I'm talking about the history of the country, the direction of the future administrations, and our civil liberties. The thing that I heard Ron DeSantis talk about was, as bad as the social experiment was, the science experiment, treating people like guinea pigs, he equally understood that it is not the role of the federal government to pick winners and losers. And that's what COVID was all about.
Mm-hmm.
Bill Lee did it. Mike DeWine did it. Donald Trump did it. Mike Pence did it. They picked winners and losers based upon the lab coats. And DeSantis made it perfectly clear. These public health officials have no business being anywhere near the controls of government because they don't get it.
All right, so let me talk to you about this too, because move forward now, a year even. That'd be the heart of the primary, right? A year from now. What does this look like as more comes out on the truth of COVID? More comes out on because that's the big story of the week you and I would have normally talked about. We've got to get to.
It's the hole in the boat, brother.
It's and you're going to find out Fauci wasn't even a virologist. Fauci and his organization was funding that lab, covering his rear end on the cover story of how it leaked, or did it come from a farmer? That was all to protect himself. And this is who the president was listening to. Now, I think it's also, in fairness to Governor DeSantis, he wasn't just being rebellious and guessing. He surrounded himself with other scientists that he trusted just as much. And don't forget, it began with a question, Dr. Bricks. He wasn't being a jerk. When have we ever quarantined the healthy in history? And how did that work out? And her answer was, oh, we haven't. This is just kind of our experiment in real time. Well, we're a republic. We don't do such experiments in real time, is what his response was. It's a good moment for Governor DeSantis. He had another one, too. President Biden appeared on Comedy Central, and he's going on and on. I'm going to play this for the listeners, and I don't think you're going to be able to hear it, David, but I want them to hear this in context. This is the president on Comedy Central talking about anyone that would protect children from mutilation and these aggressive medical procedures at a time of perhaps immaturity or, psychological questioning anybody that would stand in the way of that is darn near sinful. Listen.
Transgender kids is a really harder thing. What's going on in Florida is, as my mother would say, close to sinful.
So what's going on in Florida is, as his mother would say, is close to sinful. What's going on in Florida? He's targeting Governor DeSantis. My first question for you before we go any further, does Joe Biden want Ron DeSantis or Donald Trump? Why is his first volley to pick on DeSantis in Florida? Or do you think it was by accident?
Wow. Let me see if I get the question right. Does Biden want Trump or DeSantis? I think without a doubt, Biden wants Trump, but he knows that he's going to get DeSantis. And so he's beginning now to launch all of those salvos because it's 2 for 1. It's a perfect situation. If he takes out DeSantis by demonizing him as an extremist, that's the worst nightmare for America, and he's left with Trump, then he'll blow up Trump in the same way. This is, again, we have to remind people of this. This is straight from the desk of John Podesta, sitting in the East Wing of the White House, or in the West Wing of the White House. East Wing, West Wing.
West now.
Sometimes forget.
He's in the West now.
West. He's in the West Wing of the White House. I'm sitting there now, dispensing millions and billions of dollars of checks in the name of green energy to people. This is the same Podesta that ran the Clinton White House, that ran the Hillary Clinton's campaign, that ran the Obama White House. He and Susan Rice are running everything in our civil government. They'll do anything to continue to do so. We all know that Joe Biden, I mean, come on, he didn't run. He didn't campaign. He sat in his basement and was elected president by John Podesta, George Soros, and the radical left. And they'll do it again.
To suggest it's sinful and cruel to ban puberty blockers and sex change surgeries for kids. Think about how backwards that is.
You know what? That hurts my brain.
No, but never mind creation, lose God, lose man. All that aside, I'm going to put God aside. I'm glad a priest in Franklin didn't, but I'm going to put it aside and tell you 9 out of 10 times. All of this, what's the word I'm allowed to use now for this? Because I don't want to get fired over it. It's
gender dysphoria.
Is dysphoria allowed still? Yeah, you don't want to say disorder. You don't want to say disorder.
Right, exactly.
You want to say dysphoria.
Is
all this gender dysphoria or cultural pressure is resolved by the end of puberty in 90+% cases among girls, 82+% cases of boys. This isn't even scientifically accurate. Why would you harm what turns out to be wrong for 9 out of 10 girls permanently when they're kids? Now, if they still feel that way at 18, 19, that'd be one thing. What is sin here?
Let's take it to another level. There's another grievous sin against humanity in this, and that is the invasion of custodial parental rights to work with their children over decisions that we recognize are not really adult decisions until you're an adult. This is an invasion of the government, and it's not just an invasion of the government fueled by Washington, D.C., which it is, but now we've got people in local school systems and districts, we don't even know their names, that are sitting anonymously with children, counseling them upon life decisions, which they will never recover from, and parents are not even in the equation?
Let me do you one better. Ron DeSantis takes that video on a split screen. Now, I cut it short. It's on my Facebook wall if you want to read it. I could play it for everybody right now, but I want to save the minute and a half. It's a ridiculous piece of audio. It's a ridiculous piece of political rhetoric over common sense, let alone the security of children. And it is a warped view of what is sin and what isn't. He takes that 2-minute piece with a split screen. So you're seeing the president say all this, and on the other screen, you're seeing what they're doing to kids, the actual procedures. It's a jaw dropper. You talk about winning an argument without ever speaking. You talk about winning an argument without even responding. Just let him talk and show the videos of what we're doing to kids. Part 2 of the great moments of Ron DeSantis. It's been a good 48 hours. It's more than a book tour, David. This guy's off and running. And the campaign. And I posted this at 6:10 in the morning, and I said, the presidential race has begun. And Joe Biden thinks it's between him and Ron DeSantis. And it may very well end up being that, but it's begun. And right now, DeSantis leads 2-0. 1-0 over Trump, 2-0 over Biden. Anything you want to add to that?
Podesta, sure. And Podesta, however, thinks that he's in control because by taking on DeSantis now and blowing DeSantis up, then he gets Trump, which is what he really wants.
And if the last 24 years are any indicator, he'll win. Podesta doesn't lose very often.
No, Podesta doesn't lose very often, and he never loses because he's short of spare change.
What are the polls showing a year and 9 months out on the left and the right? We'll go over them with David Zanotti next on WTN.
Trouble in the skies and on the runways, near misses more frequently. So the Aviation Safety Summit has convened to come up with solutions. Details at 11:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Visiting with David Zanotti from the American Policy Roundtable and host of the Public Square on 200 stations, including this one. Had a lot of discussion. What are the polls showing? Well, the latest Rasmussen on today, March 15th, shows the president's approval rating at 49% approve, 50% disapprove. He is underwater by 1 percentage point. Pretty remarkable for a guy that didn't campaign, hid in a basement, and destroyed the entire economy. That's breathtaking in and of itself. When we dig deeper into the Democratic numbers, I've often said this, David, if things play out with let's say Biden doesn't run and things play out with an open primary, you're going to get the same thing you got 2.5 years ago, the same thing you got 4 years earlier. It would be Bernie Sanders again. Again, we had an outsider referendum election against all incumbents. That produced Donald Trump, a non-politician. It would have produced a socialist Bernie Sanders, but they meddled to give it to Hillary. Then they cut the deal and hid Biden in the basement. You'll get Bernie again, and these numbers bear it out. So what you're seeing is Biden at 29%, Bernie Sanders at 17%. Imagine an incumbent president in New Hampshire, and Biden's at 29%, Sanders at 17%, Buttigieg is at 14%. Elizabeth Warren's at 11. Kamala Kamala's at 11. Klobuchar is at 7. So it's all the usual names. The only difference is now Gavin Newsom and AOC are on the list, and they're at 1%. For all Gavin Newsom did to get on, get some recognition and introduce himself in the presidential sweepstakes, 1% in New Hampshire interest in him. Now, don't forget, Joe Biden, the sitting president, came in 7th in New Hampshire, 4th in Iowa. But these are going to be the early sweepstakes, and they just don't look good. But, I mean, one thing I would say is Gavin Newsom, stick to your bankrupt state that you've destroyed. You've got no chance of... I come to the same conclusion that I was at a year and a half ago. Joe Biden is their best bet, and I think Podesta knows it.
Yeah, he certainly does, because with Biden, Podesta and Rice keep their hands on all the dials.
But if you wanted to juice things up if it gets tight, you could jettison Kamala and add somebody. I don't think it's going to be Stacey, although they seem to have found a place for her to keep her on payroll. But you could juice it up with somebody crazy enough. If you really wanted to unite your party, you could get Bernie or somebody on board. Remember, there's going to be a lot of really aggressive progressives that don't think they've gone left enough.
Wait a minute. If you've got a Biden-Sanders ticket, I'm sorry, I can't get those two old Muppets sitting up in the cheap seats out of my head.
That's a combined experience level of 164.
Waldorf and Stadler.
It doesn't look good for them. How does it look for Republicans? I'm glad you asked, because we're going to look at some primary early numbers there. And, of course, they're all between either Trump or DeSantis and Biden, or if you're looking from a Republican standpoint, they're between DeSantis and Trump, which is why you're going to see even somebody like Nikki Haley getting no traction whatsoever. Nor is Pence, nor is Cruz, nor is Pompeo, nor is Governor Nome, who I would be interested in. It is definitely early on DeSantis versus Trump. I'll tell you how the numbers bear out next on WTN.
.30 on the dot. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. And yes, that's more like it. 44 degrees with a whole bunch of sun here on Music Row. And we're only going to get warmer. Full forecast in 2 minutes. Trouble in the skies and on the runway. Planes nearly colliding more frequently has prompted today's Aviation Safety Summit chaired by Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg.
Initial information suggests that more mistakes than usual are happening across the system. On runways, at gates when planes are pushing back, in control towers, and on flight decks. So today is about the entire system, which means it's about all of us.
After the collapse of regional banks Silicon Valley Bank last Friday and the Signature Bank over the weekend, there may now be trouble on the horizon for a much larger financial institution. Shares of Credit Suisse fell to a new record low this morning after its biggest backer said it would not provide any fresh funding. The Dow tanked more than 500 points at the opening bell. That's the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. Have you ever thought about why we invest in the stock market? Well, you often hear because we want to protect ourselves from inflation. Well, what is inflation? It's prices going up. Who's raising prices? Companies. What do you own when you own stocks? You own the companies raising prices, so it helps protect us from that. The other thing is this. Think about the most successful people you know. They're typically business owners. And you get to be a business owner when you invest in the stock market. Now, if we think about the stock market, a lot of people worry about, well, what if the stock market drops and it never comes back? Well, this is another thing that I like to explain to people. If the stock market goes down and it never comes back, what does that mean? That means that earnings went down and they never came back up again. So earnings went down. If earnings go down, what else goes down? Taxes go down. If taxes go away, what else goes away? The government goes away. If the government goes away, the FDIC goes away. So think about it. Everything is built on the stock market. That's why I don't ever worry about the stock market going down. Everybody has the same goal in mind when stocks go down. Get it to come back up, because we got to get earnings to come back up. Now, you have two things at your control to get earnings to come back up. One is sales. We can change what we're selling or sell more of whatever we have if we can. And if we can't do that, we can reduce our expenses. And that's exactly what companies do. You'll notice that they lay off people when things get bad, and hence that is why the stock market has recovered from every downturn throughout all of history. Now, if you want to learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call, or call 615-851-1950.
All right, currently we got sunny skies, 44 degrees at the Puffy Muffin in Brentwood. It is 45 to the north in Hendersonville, downtown on Music Row. Sunny skies, 46 degrees. It feels like 42 in Nashville. The market's a mess. Dow's down 643. NASDAQ's down 127. The S&P's down 66. As we always say, Shanks Show. The market is down at 1135. Loan Pronto. We love our veterans. If you have a VA loan, in this housing market, homeowners with VA loans have access to a ton of instant cash that you can do a ton of smart things with. I'm Michael DelGiorno for Loan Pronto, and if you need cash to pay off high-interest credit card debts or other high-interest loans, how does a check for $80,000, $90,000 in your hand sound? We can get it done in less than 2 weeks. We're helping veterans every day get the money they need with a quick and easy, zero-cost cash-out refi. Zero closing costs, I might add. And the really cool thing about VA loans is you can access up to 100% of the home's value. Use that money to get yourself, free up cash flow to afford inflation, and get rid of all debt if possible, but any attached to a variable rate heading into recession. It's smart to do. Your home is the ticket, and Loan Pronto is the place. Most homeowners are clearing up $800 to $1,000 a month in cash flow doing this with super low APRs. So we love working with our veterans. Call now. See what your options are. 499-5780 for Loan Pronto. 499-5780. That's 499-5780. Online at loanpronto.com. Equal housing lender. NMLS 1661781. Subject to lender approval. As you can see, it is 11:37. Temperatures are warming. Market is crashing. And I'm Michael DelGiorno, joined by David Zanotti. We were kind of going through some early numbers. It might, just so you don't have a delusional view of things. Right now, as bad as things are, Joe Biden looks really good in the polls. That's a whole conversation in and of itself. I'll give you another example. In a New Hampshire primary, Biden versus Trump, Biden's leading by 4 percentage points beyond the margin of error. And he's leading DeSantis by 5. Make no mistake about it. If Joe Biden decides to run, this sounds crazy to you, I know. He's their best bet, and he's still the leader. Now, what about DeSantis versus Trump? This is very interesting. If you look at a Florida poll, DeSantis leads Trump 52% to 27%. Haley's at 4%. Cheney's at 3%. Don't worry about a spoiler there. Pence at 2%. Cruz, you're done. Pompeo's at 0. Governor Nome is at 0. I mean, it's completely DeSantis and Trump. You go outside of that, and the numbers vary greatly. The latest New Hampshire poll, I find this interesting, David. Trump leads DeSantis 58 to 17%. So I think DeSantis might do better than people think in Iowa, might stumble a bit in New Hampshire, but then when we start getting into the primary process, he'll start doing a lot better. He's going to probably have an early loss in New Hampshire, and we don't expect that to change very much. But what do you make of all these numbers, other than it's an eternity out and too soon to really analyze?
Well, and it's highly emotional right now for people that are being polled on the Republican side, because they're still dealing with the sense of injustice that, forget the question of electoral changes, losses, frauds, et cetera. Forget all that. Forget the 2020 election question. There's a sense that there's unfinished business and Donald Trump didn't get a chance to do more. So there's still a sense of regret that and maybe that this guy should get a second shot at it. There's a certain sense of fairness about that. I get that. And of course, he is a candidate and Ron DeSantis is not. And people that are not paying attention don't know much about Ron DeSantis yet. So that's fine. Now, the Trump strategy is essential to understand here. He has got to get 3 or 4 more people into this race, because those 2%, 3%, 8% numbers will give him, once again, that 31, 32, 33%, which will take him through the primaries while DeSantis is catching up. And that, of course, will be critical.
If this field
so
comes
he's
down
got to have more players in.
You said something earlier, and it was kind of like a slip of the tongue, but I'll go ahead and say it out loud. My early analysis is, if Donald Trump gets the nomination, I don't think he's got the numbers to beat Joe Biden. I mean, that's just my early opinion. I would love to be wrong. My other opinion is, if DeSantis gets the nomination, it might be a struggle to get really that 26% that really love Donald Trump to unite behind DeSantis. That might be a difficult challenge for the Republicans. I can say this with great clarity even today. If it's a 2-person race, advantage DeSantis.
Well, and let's talk about the big race as well, because there are 3 issues that without a doubt are the complete invested portfolio of the Democrat attempt to retain the White House. Those issues are abortion, critical race theory, and climate change. Only 2 of those issues drive votes, that being abortion and that being critical race theory, racism. And those are the 2 core constituencies that Democrats are putting their entire hope on, which is angry women in the suburbs and angry people of color. This is where they're going. This is where they believe they will have their moral righteousness. And, Joe Biden will be seen as the virtuous one. And remember, Joe's basement this year is on Pennsylvania Avenue. So he has the power of the incumbency, which you would never want to throw away going into a presidential election, because there's nothing like the guy who flies in an Air Force One, even if he never gets out or they beep the cars at the airplane. It doesn't matter. It's
trips
still
down
Air
the
Force
stairs.
One.
Which we don't.
It's the same thing. So that's a significant reality that you don't want to throw away the incumbency. They're not going to pitch that. So, okay, there you go. It's going to be Biden. I mean, it's just going to be Biden.
Well, you got to look at those numbers. You don't have
anything.
You don't have anything else. In fact, if you and I want to have a long discussion, you want to spice it up, because those numbers for Kamala are as bad as the numbers are for Gavin Newsom, in a sense, as a sitting vice president.
Sure.
So if you're going to spice this ticket up in any way, you're going to jettison Kamala, which I don't think they're going to do. But they don't really have any other play but Joe Biden. I did the reverse earlier alone. I want you to do it. So that's their play, Joe Biden, and that's the legs they're going to stand on. Now, the other side is a 2-man race between Trump and DeSantis. I won't even get into who's going to win. If you look at the legs of the table, if you talk about the border, I think Donald Trump has the upper hand, although DeSantis as a governor has done nothing wrong. In fact, he just carried Dade County in a way that we haven't seen in history. So he's very strong with Hispanic voters. Hispanic voters are fleeing. It's a trend in talk radio, Hispanic talk radio. Hispanics are fleeing to the Republican Party in droves. So, but I think that's an edge for Donald Trump. The economy, he made it great the first time. That might be an edge. I get to that one leg that's going to be difficult for Donald Trump, and that is COVID. And clearly DeSantis has outplayed him there. But how do you see that one playing out?
Sure. There's a second piece, Michael. The three issues that will be the issues of the election, because Podesta has more money and more foresight and is a better planner than the Republicans, and the Republicans will be on the defense. This is the difficult thing. The Podesta will put Biden on the offense, where an incumbent should be on the defense, because after all, right, to beat the champ, you got to knock out the champ.
Yeah, you got to fire him first before you can.
Right. So but he will be on the offense, and he'll be on the offense on abortion, critical race theory, and climate change. Now, I have to tell you, when it comes to debating issues, Donald Trump's not that good. He's great at personality. He's great at television. And he'll be talking about defending a record that most people will, sadly to say, already have forgotten. Now, and it's old news. Biden will be on the future. Trump will be on the past. The irony of that is remarkable. I just don't see Donald Trump yet doing anything to move himself to engage the voters where they will engage at the voting booth. It's not there.
I have two more. One is cultural, and then one is a poll. And that's how I want to spend the remainder of our time together. It's too precious. So here's the latest Rasmussen poll. I often talk about this. And I wrote a book 20-something years ago on the cultural wars, the economic wars. I think you see the socialism versus capitalism playing out. And I think you see the abandonment of God, his way, his truth, and his life for moral relativism and anything goes. But I have often tried to warn people, you never abandon something without replacing it. Whether you do it consciously or not, you're doing it. When men abandon their family, it's because they usually got a girlfriend and replaced the wife. I mean, we replace things. And they become your heart, whether it's acts of devotion, consciously or unconsciously, or the utmost highest place in your heart and passion. It becomes your God. Yourself can become a God, or some other issue. We see in the gay community, their sexuality almost becomes the essence of their being. It defines everything about themselves, their complete and total identity, and it informs all of their policies and issues. In a sense, it becomes their God. We've seen this with climate change. Now, I said during COVID, they got to be crapping their pants. They're seeing you do for COVID, including Christians, who were clearly far more in this world and of this world than they thought. Fearful. It just dawned on them we're all going to die. And that fear gave them the ability to be controlled. And we saw everybody obey, left and right, in fear and hysteria for COVID in ways they never did with climate change. And I said, you watch, you're not going to, A, let go of COVID very fast, and B, they're going to try to conflate this now to climate change because they saw you finally get conditioned. So talk radio guy would do a whole thing on, is climate change a new false religion? But I don't want to do it that way. I want to do it the way I do it. Yeah, you abandon God. You abandon your identity in creation. You'll fall for anything. And if you think climate change is a life or death issue, it'll become your God. As a beast of the field, which you're not, but they like to make you think you evolved from, you're conditioned to avoid pain and gain pleasure, to fight or flee. And people are quick to flee. Now, here's the bad news for them, David. Are you ready? The latest Rasmussen. A majority of voters agree with Republican presidential candidates' criticism of climate change as a religion that isn't really about the climate at all. And we know that. It's about control. It's about redistribution of wealth. It's about eliminating economic and military superpowers for the purposes of global governance. But when Vivek Ramaswamy made that statement, 60% agreed, including 47%, nearly half of America strongly agreed. We talk about the divided states of America, a divided, polarized country. When it comes to global warming, and you talk about how it never translates to votes, not like a woman's rights and abortion does. No one's buying it. And they're not buying it post-COVID either. If that was their plan to conflate this, they failed.
And there's one last piece to be driven into this argument, and that's when people finally come to realize that global climate change in this administration is the way by which John Podesta has funneled trillions of dollars to presidential friends and away from presidential enemies, presidentially sanctioned industries versus those that are not. In essence, global warming is the way that George Soros is buying every piece of America that is available. When they realize the scandal of this, the massive transfer of wealth to corporations, they see the scandal of this, then we're back to Solyndra. Solyndra was the buzzword that wiped out the environmental movement in the Obama administration. It's scandal. Once people
is Silicon Valley Bank collapse the new Solyndra?
No, not yet. I don't think so. Because people are too scared of bank collapses. They were taught that the Depression was a boogeyman. They don't understand how the Depression happened. So no, they won't get it yet. But it might be a great teachable moment. Maybe we should come back and talk about that sometime, about what really happened in the Depression and why it could in fact happen again here.
Can I inquire real quick about something?
Wait a minute. Do you have a question?
What?
Are you asking two old farts pontificating? You know what this sounds like to me, David?
Mac talk.
It sounds like another Mac talk.
Wait a minute. This is starting to sound like a Mac talk. A curious, young, intelligent man asking an old, stubborn fool for wisdom.
What are you can jump the intro.
Oh, you're right. You're right. I'm so sorry.
No, what is your question? Go ahead. What is your question for two old men?
Okay, so you guys are talking about issues, talking about polling, talking about what maybe Trump had before, what he could have had, what you feel like unfinished business. We got a year and a half. We've talked about vetting candidates, but now I'm making my rubric, bird's eye view. How do I grade all those? Is it personality? Is it issues and I know it's different for individuals, but what do I need to care about more? The issues, the personality, who I like? Do I need to wait to see them debate each other? I mean, I feel like there's so many things. A lot of people are asking these similar questions here. There's a lot to like about both of them. How do I weigh these certain things out?
Who wants to go first, me or you? I can go first.
Go ahead.
I'll go first.
Sure.
First of all, you should be open to every single candidate. If they have the courage to run, you ought to hear them out. All right, that's number one. Remember when I was telling you, Mac, a long time ago, they used to have these blind tests that would go based on the issues and would walk you through all the top issues and all the proper responses, and then it would tell you which candidate best represents you. That's a bit of a phenomenon because we tend to play personality politics or popular politics. And then we get peer pressured into politics, especially on social media. So is your loyalty to Donald Trump his platform or his ability to enact the platform? So that's why I say he's got great cred. When he says he'll do something, he's proven for 4 years he'll do it. You may not like the style in which he does it, but he will do it. That's where his cred is. But you've got to win hearts and minds. You've got to win debate to win then go on and do it in a way that lasts for America. So, yes, you need to first and foremost identify who prioritizes the top issues the way you do, who would solve them in the ways you think sound best, and who has the skills to verbally and, actually do it and win a lot of Democrat hearts and minds along the way. Ronald Reagan created a revolution. Donald Trump, people are going to hate me for saying this, created a great America again, but also created a great divide. So the answer is you had all the answers in your question. You're right where you should be right now is my answer.
Okay.
You should be interested in them all. If Trump and DeSantis are coming to the surface early, that makes sense to me. And you should listen to how they're doing things all along the way in real time. You should watch very closely when they debate, how they treat each other, and who articulates the challenges and the solutions the best, because they're most likely to govern the best. That's my answer. David, yours.
Mac, the first thing I look at is who's qualified to be president of the United States. And most of the names that have been discussed right here are people who do have significant intellectual capacity, experiential capacity, and a level of integrity that you could perhaps trust them with this kind of power. All right, it's a big job. So you've got those things going for you. So you've got a number of people to choose from. First thing, are they qualified? Secondly, is what is the true challenge of the nation right now? What is America facing that is the single greatest challenge? That single greatest challenge is not Putin and it's not China, though those are very big issues. The biggest question is worldview. We have an administration right now that is completely lock, stock, and barrel sold out to the Center for American Progress and the radical socialist progressive worldview. They are doing everything in their power to move America from a constitutional republic to an administrative state run by elites. Who then on the other side has the ability to fix that problem if they're given the opportunity? Who has the capacity to understand that and move against it with understanding and forward thinking? Because that's the next biggest, what's the biggest crisis? Then ultimately people are going to come down to, okay, I get all that. That's the luxury of a primary. Then the question becomes electability. Which of these people can't win? Because if they can't win in a general election, for goodness sakes, get them out now. This isn't, this isn't the county fair. You're not playing for a Cupid doll. These stakes are massive. Get those people out of the way and get to people who can really solve the problem. And right now, Republicans have the luxury. They're going to have some great television and radio ahead because there's going to be some interesting debates. And I do think that you're pointing out rightly that watching these people talk to each other, if we get to 2 or 3 candidates instead of the cattle call of 14, when those debates are absolutely meaningless, ridiculous, and not worth bothering with.
We only have 30 seconds left. Is it oversimplifying to say to Mac, I think, with the exception of maybe 26 to 30% of Republicans that are just sold on Donald Trump, and there's nothing that's going to affect their loyalty.
Sure.
But for most people, they're looking for a new and improved Trump. Somebody that does everything he says he'll do like he did, make America great again like he did, prioritize the issues the way he did, but maybe not be the same style. And then the proclivity for them to maybe look at Ron DeSantis and say, well, here's the same policies as Trump, with a different, deeper style. I think that's what's taking shape, don't you?
And I think that the going forward, what we'll see is that DeSantis is much more than that. I think DeSantis has a depth of character and experience and understanding that actually matches the hour better than Trump, where Trump does have, at this moment, still has a lot of loyalty, which he's earned, and personality.
And Mac, I hope that answers your question. That's your long-distance dedication, Casey.
All right, David Zanotti is heard on 200 stations with the Public Square, including this one, and hope we see you again before the end of the week. Thanks for joining us today. That was an hour and a half.
Thanks,
Thank you
Michael.
for your time. It meant the world to me. 11:54 at Super Talk, 99.7 WTN. The Matt Murphy Show is next. I'll see you in the morning at 9.